Hey guys, Sean here. Welcome to the F1 Word and to the race reaction for the... it's the Imola Grand Prix, isn't it? The Emilia, Romagna. It's either of those pronunciations. Absolutely, thoroughly enjoyed that one. That was a cracking race, start to finish. Some great racing out there, lots of drama. A nice sprinkling of rain as well. We do like a nice sprinkling of rain, especially around a track like Imola that often needs a nice sprinkling of rain to make things interesting. But yes, cracking race. Really happy with that one. Hope everyone's well in chat. By the way, good to see you all. 3 weeks since the last one. Wholly unacceptable. Come on, Formula One. Sort yourself out. But they are going to come thick and fast between now and Christmas, pretty much. 12th of December will be the last one. So lots of racing to come over the next 8-9 months or whatever it turns out to be. But yes, so hyped for Formula One being back again. Should we have a look at the race result before we kick on? Max Verstappen. A couple of things to mention here when we get through it, but I'll do that as I get to them. Max Verstappen was the winner of the race. 22 seconds clear of Lewis Hamilton, who recovered exceptionally well, really, to get back to second place, given where he ended up at Tozer at one point. More on that shortly. Lando Norris in third place for McLaren, his second career podium. Fourth for Charles Leclerc and fifth for Carlos Sainz. A Ferrari possibly back in this fight for third. We didn't see them there last year, did we? But they could be now. Sixth place for Ricciardo. Seventh for Lance Stroll. Some more points for Aston Martin. He's doing the best he can for them, isn't he? Is Lancey boy. Pierre Gasly, eighth place for Alfa Tauri. I reckon they'll leave this weekend very disappointed, you know. Alfa Tauri, I genuinely do. I thought they were on for big points. I really did. But ninth place for Kimi Raikkonen, little risky thing there. He is under investigation for a safety car infringement, so he could yet fall out of the points. Esteban Ocon, 10th place. I think he's had a very good weekend, certainly versus his teammate. Fernando Alonso, 11th. Sergio Perez, great Saturday, pretty poor Sunday. Yeah, we need to see a bit more from him in future, but only his second race in that car. We'll talk about him in a bit. 13th place for Yuki Tsunoda. Again, I think that's disappointing for AlphaTauri. 14th for Giovinazzi. 15th for Sebastian Vettel. He is classified 15th. I've gone through the official thing. He's classified 15th, but technically he didn't finish the race because he did pull the car into the pits right towards the end. So he's classified because the Haas boys couldn't recover those 2 laps. So Mick Schumacher in 16th place, Nikita Mazepin in 17th. So, you know, say what you want. Steps forward for Mazepin this weekend. He got past turn 3 and finished the race, although there were dramas. On the subject of drama, Valtteri Bottas, 18th place, George Russell, 19th. Well, they're both out of the race, but that's where they'll be classified, if that makes sense. 20th place and out was Nicholas Latifi, but it's the big talking point, really, from all of that is the Bottas-Russell collision, which I'm pretty sure we'll go over at some decent length today. We're going to... I'm not sure... if he might be having some technical issues. I keep seeing him drop in and out of waiting. So I'm going to say a very good evening to Dan. Are you there, mate? We might have some issues with Dan. So I'll see if he comes back in a bit. But yes, pretty decent Grand Prix. So we'll come off that one for now. And we will kick things off by talking a little bit, I guess. We'll have to see if it's a problem on my end, which I don't think it is. But yeah, a little bit of a problem all over the place here for some reason, but let's kick it off with the some slides there. Lots of pictures, as I said last week, will be on screen. They're not going to be in order of whoever we're talking about in this one, but it's the best I can do without, you know, ending up in a mess trying to put the right pictures in. But we'll start with the very start of the race, that sprinkling of rain early doors. If Dan does turn up here, I'm sure he'll give me a shout and let me know. Bear with us a second, guys. Just bear with us. Having a little bit of a technical issue. I think it might be with the stream. It's just let me know in chat if it's all coming through all right with you. Super quickly before we properly kick off with this one. Apologies again. But let me know. Just let me know if you can see the stream all right. There might be a slight issue with this one on my internet end. Yeah, all good. Oscar T says all good. Can't hear Dan. Yeah, I can't hear Dan either. It's okay. I think we've got an issue with Discord, so just bear with me a second. He'll jump in if he's got something to check. All good with you guys? Yeah. I don't know what to say, really. We'll kick off with the very start of the race, and Dan can drop in as and when he gets something sorted. But I might just message and see if anybody's free to jump on super quickly. Bear with me a second. Yeah, there we go. So that should be all right from my end, but we're just waiting for Dan to sort his problems out. So let's just start with the start of the race, because I think that's the way to go. That's the best way to go. But it was a cracking start, wasn't it? Max Verstappen down into that first chicane got an absolute belter of a start, getting past Lewis Hamilton and Sergio Perez on the run to Tamburello. Really good overtake. Bit of an incident into turn 1, though. I think we might have Dan.
Good evening.
There he is.
Hopefully you can hear me.
Yeah, I mean, I'll come to your first impression of the race in a second. We're just going to talk about that incident down at Tamburello, that great start from Max Verstappen. Alongside Lewis Hamilton, side by side, a little bit of, I don't know if there's any wheel banging or a little bit of wheel rubbing, but Max definitely on the racing line there through those first couple of corners. Lewis Hamilton over that chicane, the bumpy serrated curbs on the outside there, those horrible sausage curb things which I can't stand. Could have been a lot worse, that incident. Hamilton could have quite easily ploughed into the side of him, but Lewis not overly happy over team radio, as any driver in that position isn't going to be, to be honest, Dan, are they? They never tend to be. But do you think that was just first lap racing incident, Max's corner? Lewis maybe could have backed out rather than heading over the curbs?
Definitely racing incident, but definitely a little bit cheeky from Max. Really did squeeze him, gave him nowhere to go, but it was his corner. In those kind of conditions, though, I think most other drivers probably would have given a little bit more room, but that's why Max Verstappen's so good. That's why we love Max Verstappen, because he knows just about where the edge is and pushes always to it. Hamilton, understandably so, not very happy. It definitely gave me vibes of, it was either 2015 or 2016 Spa with Hamilton and Rosberg at the end of the Kemmel Straight, when Hamilton just lost a bit of his front wing. I think it was very similar to that. And when Hamilton was trying to get back on the track, I was thinking, oh my God, they're going to crash into each other here. Surely this is going to be carnage on the opening lap. But both of them just about keeping it clean. I think, like you said there, mate, tiny bit of wheel banging, but on the edge between the two of them, a great start to the race.
Yeah, and it set us up nicely, didn't it? I think that was the moment for me when I realised, hang on a minute, this is going to be... this could be one of those races where we get something quite special. And early doors, those two just kind of like Bahrain to a point, but reminding me a little bit of Hungary in 2019, where those two out front, relentless pace, pulling away, leaving everybody else in their wake. It was setting itself up to be an absolute thriller between the two of them. And I thought that even if everything going on behind was a little bit DRS train or something like that, at least we had this tense battle at the front again, and it was looking good. But overall, mate, before we carry on with this, because obviously little issues there at the start, but I'm guessing you might have enjoyed that race. It was all right, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was pretty good. I mean, the season's been okay so far. Not the not the dramatic start to the season we were hoping for. No, awesome race today. I thought Bahrain, it was going to be difficult to top, but this one is right there with it from start to finish. Both of the starts and both of the finishes, it was awesome, up and down the grid. So many stories. So I don't want to keep you any longer, mate. Hopefully all the technical issues are done now. Apologies from my end. But yeah, let's carry on.
No, it's all right. I never account for technical issues when I do streams, so I spend the first couple of minutes going, I don't know what to do now. So apologies again, everyone, but we'll crack on and lots to get through today. We'll stick with, I think we're going to do what we did last week, or not last week, 3 weeks ago now, 3 weeks, and sort of go through the top three, but we'll do team by team. So Red Bull, Mercedes, McLaren, Ferrari, and so on, because it's easier that way, isn't it, than getting lost. But really good day for Max Verstappen. I think he drove exceptionally well. Apart from that moment there, you can see on the picture where he was under the safety car, lighting up those rear tyres, trying to get some heat in them, and very nearly had a moment. I thought Charles Leclerc was going to sneak by whilst he was off track. I think Max would have got past pretty swiftly, come DRS being activated. But apart from that little moment, I'd say faultless from Verstappen today, and it's confirmed. We were talking after Bahrain, weren't we, about how it looks like we're going to have this really great title fight between Verstappen and Hamilton, and I think that's been confirmed this weekend because the Red Bull looked mighty quick, even though Mercedes are concerned about these, or Aston Martin are concerned more about the regulations affecting low-rate cars. I don't think it is, because Lewis Hamilton was right on the pace today with Verstappen when he got in that clear air, set the fastest lap, 1 point clear in the championship. I can't wait for this. But Verstappen, I don't like saying faultless because he did make that one mistake, but if that's the only mistake he makes all race and still wins it, then it doesn't matter really, does it? It could have been worse. We saw some people get it spectacularly wrong at times, didn't we? So great drive from Max Verstappen today. Not so great from Checo at Red Bull, got to be said. Really good. I said when I went down the order that he had a really good Saturday, second on the grid. And I think if it had stayed dry, he would have been in the fight for the win today. Absolutely. But just a bit of a sloppy afternoon for him. What did he do? He spun went off track under the safety car, didn't he? And then thought that he could retake his positions, which you can do on a formation lap, but you can't do under the safety car. So that was a 10-second time penalty. He then spun again a little bit later. Ironically, more or less the same place Alex Albon spun last year. Just thought I'd mention that. Why not? Is only his second race in the car, though. So, yeah, a bit disappointed with Checo today, but he did say 5 races to get up to speed, and he was on the front row yesterday, and he did say as well that he's still not completely comfortable with the car. So maybe dry race, obviously we'll never know, could have been a very different story. But I think Red Bull, in terms of the pace they've shown this weekend and the fact they got the win with Verstappen, will be pretty happy coming away from this one, even though Checo didn't get the points they needed to close the gap on Mercedes in the constructors.
Well, just on that they have closed in, right? Because Bottas didn't score.
Yeah, not by as much then. It's probably what I should have said. Yeah, not by as much. At least you are, mate. I'm not.
But I'll start with Checo because you mentioned it there. Just a really strange race. Yesterday, awesome for him getting that big result. His second race for the team. Obviously, Max wants a teammate that's closer to him, but still wants to be leading the team. So maybe a little bit of a wake-up call for Verstappen. But straight away, we mentioned it a second ago, into turn one, he put that right straight away, starting in second gear as well.
Yeah.
So he was very much on the ball, no messing about. And Checo struggled in those early stages, lost a place to Leclerc on that opening lap, also made a bit of a mistake, just past where Latifi ended up crashing with Mazepin. And then pretty much from there on out, just mistake after mistake after mistake, and kind of, I don't want to say he was given a lifeline, but certainly when the red flag did come out, that 10-second penalty that he was given didn't really make much of an effect, and he was still in the running for a podium. Had that spin once again, out of the points, and never really was able to recover. I think the big one for me today wasn't the spins. I think the fact that it's his second race, we saw so many drivers. How many times did we see Fernando Alonso making mistakes today? Vettel made a few. So all of these drivers, Sainz as well, all of these drivers that are moving to new teams, it's taken them all a little bit of time. So I'll give him some leeway there. The one for me, though, was overtaking Ricciardo and Gasly under the safety car. I mean, that's a slam dunk, as we all know. And you'd think for Perez, with all those years of experience, wouldn't have done that. I don't know. Maybe that was just me. But that one really, really surprised me, because straight away, you know that's going to be a penalty. You know that he only just got in front of Gasly and Ricciardo. It's not as if he's going to bolt away from them because they're all behind the safety car. So that one was a real strange one. And whether he was just perhaps a little bit flustered that he lost the place on lap one, a little bit flustered that he wasn't quite there with Max and Hamilton after the safety car, I'm not too sure. But surprised on there. But on the Max front, that's exactly what he needs to be doing this season. When Hamilton makes mistakes, which we all know is so rare. I can't remember the last time we saw Hamilton make a mistake like he did today. Verstappen's got to be winning. Unlucky not to get the fastest lap, but faultless, apart from that little spin on the safety car restart after the red flag. Just a mega performance. And even with that restart at the end of the race, still finishing way in front of Hamilton in P2, over 20 seconds, I think it was, at the checkered flag. So great job from him today, closing in the gap in the standings, 1 point between the two of them. It's already teeing up to be a mega season.
You've said mega twice. It's supposed to be me that says mega on these streams. Unacceptable, Dan. Unacceptable. Yeah, no, I mean the Perez thing. The spins, you can cut people slack for spins, especially like you say, the drivers that are new to teams. Only 3 days of testing this year, and that wasn't smooth for everybody because we had those dust storms and all that, or sandstorms and all that business. So there was time lost as well. But that's the sort of thing you learn day one, isn't it? Really, safety car, you do not overtake under the safety car. Or yellow flags. It's a pretty obvious rule. So that was quite a surprising error for Perez to make. You know, if a rookie makes it, if Tsunoda had done it, or Mazepin had done it, or Schumacher had done it, you'd be like, first couple of races, they're rookies, we'll let them off. But for a driver of not just his experience in Formula One, but junior careers as well, it's kind of unacceptable. But just a sloppy day, second race. But I think the important thing for Red Bull is that they have seen the pace from Perez. They saw it in the race. He was quick. He was quick yesterday to get front row of the grid. Although I must say he wasn't as quick as I was expecting. I thought he would have caught Charles Leclerc in that first phase a lot quicker and giving him more problems. But Leclerc really held his own early doors. So that was a bit of a surprise for me. So still stuff to learn. But I think from a team perspective, Verstappen did everything he could today, and just a really great drive for me. I think 22 seconds up the road. I know some of that is because of traffic for Hamilton coming through, and maybe that gap, was it about 4-5 seconds consistently early doors, wasn't it, between him and Hamilton? And then we got to the pit stops and the gap closed up a little bit. But yeah, really, really tough race to manage today, and he did a great job. But Lewis Hamilton, second place, you touched on it there, that incident at Tosa. It was looking like relentless pace between those two. Hamilton versus Verstappen, it all came down to that pit stop. Slow stop on that right front for Hamilton as well. Verstappen got up to speed nicely on the dry tyres, kept it out of the wall. It was so easy on dry tyres on a drying track to just as well as Vettel showed in Canada 2011, just to dip a wheel just slightly on a wet line, and then you're in a real mess, and that could have cost him today. But Lewis Hamilton was, slow stop didn't help him there. Looked like it was a comfortable battle between them two. And then off at Tosa for Hamilton. I remember watching that though, and I'm not sort of, it's not a British bias thing to say, Lewis Hamilton doesn't make many mistakes. He doesn't. But I do feel, and I think Anthony Davison was pointing out at the Sky Pad, I do feel like whilst it was Hamilton's mistake and maybe he could have gone past the lap traffic after Tosa, Russell wasn't really brilliant in where he's trying to let the leaders through, is he there? He's staying on the dry racing line. Hamilton's having to go on the wet line. And of course, then he slides straight off at Tosa and then turns it into the wall. Quite surprised he didn't hit reverse first time around, but split-second decisions. We've said this before. Damage to the front wing, took ages to get out. 90 I'm sure Crofty said in commentary it's something like 90 seconds, a minute and a half to get out of the gravel track, which at a track like Imola is forever, isn't it? That's a lap. It's over a lap. So, yeah, it him ages to get out. But do you think Russell, without apportioning blame because mistakes happen in those conditions, do you think Russell maybe could have let him go a little bit sooner, or perhaps Hamilton should have waited till after the corner where Russell might have hopped out of the way? It was a bit of a risky lapping, but lap drivers should be hopping out of the way pretty swiftly, shouldn't they? That's kind of the point of blue flags.
Yeah, I'm with you on this. It's a really tricky one because he let him through, and that's what he's supposed to do. But normally with blue flags, you get off the racing line. You make sure in a nice spot, maybe it was a little bit before the corner on that tiny little straight before Tozer, maybe do it there. Maybe wait until after the corner. But making sure Hamilton dives down the inside from a Russell letting Hamilton through perspective, not the best. But I think what Russell was trying to do at that stage of the race, if I remember correctly, I think he was trying to pass Bottas because he was in a bit of a duel at that stage. We know what eventually happened between those two, but he was still trying to catch Bottas at that stage. And I just wonder whether he was trying to let Lewis down the inside, hoping then that Valtteri would get out the way further up the straight, and then Russell would have a go at Valtteri. Maybe that's what he was planning in his head. And in those conditions, it's not ideal. If they were dry conditions, no way Hamilton's going straight on there.
No.
He's going up the inside, happy days, and then leaving Russell in the mirrors. So it's definitely a tricky one.
I mean, just to say, I missed Lewis's interview afterwards. Emily just pointing out in chat, to be fair, Hamilton himself saying he didn't see an issue with what Russell did. So obviously he doesn't view it that way. And to be fair, over team radio and during the red flag and after the race in the Parc Fermé interview bit that I did see, he was very clear it was his error, wasn't he? I'm not trying to put the blame on Russell or trying to excuse Hamilton or anything like that. I'm just saying when, lap cars, we've seen it before, don't always let cars go through in the right way or in the best places, but Hamilton doesn't blame Russell. But as you said there, Dan, he had his own race to run, didn't he? It's something that really bugs Crofty in commentary quite often. He'd get rid of blue flags tomorrow if he could, but Russell wants that seat at Mercedes. We'll talk more about Russell shortly in that seat at Mercedes. He wants to get past Bottas, so he's got his own race to run.
Yeah, and I think that's the real issue here, is that Russell did nothing wrong. He let Hamilton through. Hamilton did the right thing by going through, and it's just an unfortunate incident. But Hamilton, who was having a great race up to that point, fair play getting back into it, because so many drivers would have parked the car there and then. And there was a few murmurings about an unsafe rejoining the track. That'll be a load of nonsense.
Well, that's because it's Hamilton.
Well, exactly, yeah.
Can't do it to some people, can they?
Well, definitely. But he was out there for so long. Mercedes would have been constantly on that team radio telling him when to join, how he can join. The marshals were all there. Yellow flags galore around that part of the circuit. And the race he ended up producing for all of us, incredible. Fighting back through the podium. And that's something we're so used to Hamilton now. Even in Germany a few years ago, when he did a very similar incident, still managed to finish in the points. And that's why he still leads the standings despite an incident like that. And with Russell, like you mentioned, he was in a very, very different race at that stage. And throughout this season, a theme we're going to see is Russell ready for that Mercedes seat? And actually, up until that point with letting Hamilton through, he was having a mega race right behind Valtteri, who was having a bit of a stinker, wasn't he? Just completely nowhere. And the fact that we were barely 30 laps in the race and Hamilton was at a point of lapping his teammate, madness, utter madness.
Yeah, and I completely agree with you about Hamilton. I mean, to recover that, I know he's in a faster car, but and there was, I know, I do it every week. We do these. Twitter means nothing. It's not generally popular opinion. It's just people who want to get angry at everything. But there was, people saying he was lucky as usual. But there was a bit of luck in the fact the red flag came out, which enabled him to unlap himself. But maybe he's just a good driver as well. I don't know why that doesn't cross people's minds that, yes, he got lucky, but name me a world champion that hasn't at some point, But yeah, the red flag did give him a little bit of luck to allow him to get himself onto the lead lap, which allowed him to then start coming through the field. But he's still going to make those passes even in a faster car. And with the greatest of respect, Bottas wasn't doing it in exactly the same car. So, let's not get into that one. But should we talk Bottas and Russell? I kind of want to do Norris next, but we'll just talk Bottas and Russell while we're doing Mercedes here. But how do you see that incident? Because when I watched that, I thought racing incident. Most of the replays I saw at the time, I thought racing incident. But there is, as you'd expect, Russell's blaming Bottas. Bottas is blaming Russell, but also Bottas, to be fair to him, is saying it's one of those things. So the fact Russell's felt the need to go on the defensive might tell us more about that than perhaps without getting too into psychology, but why not? There is a slight move from Bottas, which I think commentary nailed when they said it spooked Russell. And that's why Russell then, DRS wide open, goes to move a little bit to avoid this little tiny movement from Bottas and then wheel on the grass as well. And that's kind of what's caused that. I am not blaming Bottas. There was a car's width there. It was just about a car's width, but it was a car's width. And the replays also show that Bottas, when he spotted Russell was there, did kind of jink to the left a little bit as well, just to give him that bit more space. But Toto saying 60-40, I don't think he really said which way he was saying 60-40. A lot of people seem to be saying 60-40, some saying 60-40 Bottas, 60-40 Russell. I'm still inclined to say if we're that split on it, it's racing incident, surely. I mean, it was a nasty accident, both of them very lucky, both absolutely fine. Obviously, Bottas a little bit winded as well. Halo did its job today. That wheel was coming in the cockpit, wasn't it, for Russell, from Russell's car onto Bottas, so literally trying to get into a Mercedes, as Toto Wolff was pointed out, I suppose. But yeah, I for me, that's a racing incident. I don't want to go, Russell, some saying he should have backed out of that move. No, he shouldn't. He's a racing driver. He's there to make the move. The move was on to be made, but just, I think, maybe a little bit of inexperience there, perhaps, in that reaction to Bottas's movement. But I think Ricciardo was saying to them on Sky that there's that curve on the pit straight, isn't there? And that kind of is quite deceptive, and that causes problems. So I'm not going to sit here and say that's Russell's fault. I'm not going to sit here and say that's Bottas's fault. We saw plenty of overtakes made around the outside of that first chicane and no incident whatsoever. Just that one ended up with a collision. But wet grass, slick tyres, going to be a crash, isn't it, at the end of the day?
Definitely. I'm with you. Racing incident for me. Valtteri definitely did start moving to the right, and I think the best on board with that was Kimi Raikkonen's, because Valtteri's on board we saw was terrible. That tiny little front wing camera. Why we don't have an actual on board, I'm not sure. I'm hopefully
shocker, hasn't it, this weekend for on boards?
Oh, all over the place production today, but don't start me on that. I'll be ranting for a while. But from Russell's perspective, it's really hard to see how much room Valtteri has on his left-hand side. But what is clear to see from Russell's perspective is there is just about enough room for a car there. He didn't have to just dip a wheel in. So I think you're right. Spooked is the right word. And probably had in the back of his mind, probably both drivers, obviously aware of the situation with that seat for next season. I think Russell wanted to get in front of Valtteri at some point. That's pretty much the only place overtaking was happening today. At that stage of the race as well, maybe this is a little harsh on Valtteri, but I feel Valtteri was holding up a few cars at that stage of the race. There was definitely a queue starting to form behind him. So I think George, wanting to get that point, knowing what happened here last year, knowing Kimi Raikkonen wasn't too far behind, wanting to get the move done, perhaps a little bit eager. And I think Valtteri probably did go a little bit more defensive than he would for other drivers. We saw him having a little bit of a ding-dong with Stroll, I think it was, at the time. And he definitely does move to the right. Racing incident. Definitely racing incident. And I think you mentioned there with the halo, not only is Bottas lucky and Russell, but the amount of just debris everywhere that flew back into Kimi Raikkonen, he's also a lucky boy, and Mick Schumacher. Both of those two pretty much getting away with no damage through all of that, considering the debris on the left-hand side, the right-hand side, just everywhere on that circuit. 4 very lucky drivers there, I think.
Yeah, we've been accused of bias in the chat by idiots who don't listen properly. But no, there's a couple people saying that we don't... I don't know what of. We're big Bottas fans. A couple people saying that he didn't move right. If you watch the onboard from Raikkonen, I'm not for 1 second suggesting Bottas takes his steering wheel, swings it at 90 degrees and plows into Russell. But if you watch the onboard from Raikkonen, he is coming to the right. Now, that could be just the way the track runs, and that's the line, but he is coming to the right. But Bottas, as I think it was in Forza Nebula, might have just said. As soon as he sees Russell there, he does then jink to the left. But at that point, Russell's already decided to try and avoid anything. I'm not saying anybody's at fault. I'm not saying Bottas has deliberately tried to run Russell off. But there is definite movement when you watch the onboard from Raikkonen of Bottas coming to the right. The reason for that, there could be many reasons. He's not seen Russell. It could be just the way the track goes, anything like that. But Russell's just reacted. Wet track, DRS open as well, which means you're just going to lose so much grip at the rear end, aren't you? As soon as that's going to happen, if you've played, even on the F1 game, even on the F1 game, the amount of times I go to overtake someone with DRS open and up in a wall. Thank you, flashbacks. Yeah, it's as simple as that. I'm not accusing Bottas of deliberately trying to run him into the wall or anything like that, but horrible accident. There was a reaction afterwards, which some people have said was pretty disgusting. Bottas stuck his middle finger up, if that offends you. Good Lord. And I'm sorry. Russell kind of, for the want of a better term, bitch slaps him on the helmet, doesn't he? I mean, that's about all I could say. Just gives him a good slap on the helmet. Exchanged words. But I don't know what people expect. I mean, Verstappen and Ocon in Brazil a few years ago. These drivers, adrenaline, frustration, everything else going on. Of course they're going to be pissed off when they have an incident. Absolutely. So I don't think there's anything in that. I think if that's upsetting people that Bottas gave Russell the finger and Russell gave him a slap on the helmet, then wow. I mean, they're racing drivers. They're risking their lives for the sport they love. 180, 190 miles an hour, wet conditions, tricky conditions. An accident like that happens. There's probably a massive sigh of relief it's not been worse. I just don't think there's anything in that at all. But the incident itself, I will always say, if I cannot say that is Russell's fault, if I cannot say that is Bottas's fault, I can only say it's a racing incident. And that's why it annoys me when people say bias, because if I was being biased, I would have said it was 100% Bottas's fault, being a Brit. But yeah, I just think that's racing incident for me. On a dry track, that doesn't happen. That accident never happens. Yeah. So, and on a dry track, that move sticks. I'll say 9 times out of 10, maybe 7 times out of 10 or something like that. So, nah, I don't think so. But what kind of seems to be being missed by people, point to make here, cue the Sean's a Bottas hater statement, nobody seems to be picking up on the fact that Bottas shouldn't be fighting George Russell anyway. Valtteri Bottas shouldn't be anywhere near George Russell in that car. So, really, it was a shocking weekend for Valtteri Bottas. Even prior to that, he wasn't, I think you made the point there, Dan, he was kind of forming a bit of a queue behind him. He wasn't making the progress he needed to, which really surprises me. He was impressive in Imola last year, and had he not picked up that piece of Ferrari, could have won the race without the virtual safety car as well. You've then got practice. He looked pretty pacey as well. Qualifying up until Q3 looked like he was in with a shout of pole position, and somehow ends up 8th place in qualifying for reasons he explained afterwards, and then just nowhere in the race. But I suppose if you qualify 8th place at a track like Imola, where it's next to impossible to overtake, you're going to struggle to make your way through the field, aren't you? And of course got stuck behind Gasly early on as well on the wet tyres, which didn't work. More on that later. But just a really rubbish weekend for Bottas, and I've seen a couple of people on Twitter talking about how maybe already that's it for his championship. I tend to think with 21 races potentially still to go, it's a bit early to be saying that, but it's not the start he needed this year, especially all that talk when he came into the season about the training he'd done over the winter to really take the fight to Lewis Hamilton this year.
Yeah, after yesterday, of course it was disappointing, but I really felt today was an opportunity for Bottas. We've seen so many times Hamilton not maybe have the best qualifying or some kind of issue early on, always gets back and it's there or thereabouts for the podium. We even saw it today. And I thought, if Valtteri really wants to be fighting for the title, these are the kind of days where that little bit of extra star power has to make the difference. And it just wasn't there for whatever reason. And rather than moving forwards, he moved backwards. He was fighting for 9th and 10th, despite starting 8th. Just really peculiar. And it was a very similar story last year in Monza, where he started not in the best position. I think was running about 7th place and just wasn't able to overtake. And Monza's easier to overtake than here, but still just stuck behind these cars that Hamilton made it look so easy. We saw Norris overtaking cars. Perez at one stage was overtaking cars. And I just don't know whether it's the pressure that's on Valtteri. He feels that he has to keep the car in one piece, which didn't happen today, but maybe that's in the back of his mind, making sure that he doesn't make any silly mistakes. I'm not too sure, but that bit of hunger that we see with the likes of your Verstappens, your Norrises today, Hamiltons, just wasn't there. And even with Hamilton's incident today at Tosa, he came out of that incident still in front of Bottas, despite the fact he was stuck in the gravel for over a minute. And I think that's telling with just how much of a stinker Valtteri was having today. And as you mentioned, fighting with the Williams, that should never be happening. I don't want to say this year is done and dusted, because we're so used to Valtteri having a stinker one weekend and then the next weekend sticking it in pole and running away with it. But after this weekend, he's got a lot of ground to make up. And if he really does want to start a championship challenge, things are going to have to change pretty quickly in Portimao, a race where, if I remember rightly, he didn't have a great one there last season.
I can't remember. It wasn't that long ago. It feels like forever ago, doesn't it? I can't remember. But yeah, I think it's too early to write him off completely, but it's just not the start he needed. The problem he's got very, very quickly on the championship is that if he doesn't turn things around in the next few races, and it does quite clearly become Hamilton versus Verstappen, Mercedes will start favouring Hamilton for that title. And then that's it. As soon as Bottas has been told to hop out of the way, that's game over. That he's not got a shot. So I agree. Portimao, he doesn't need to win. I think if he can get himself on that podium, even if it is behind Hamilton and Verstappen, it's a way to bounce back. But then he's got to start picking up wins from sort of as soon as possible, hasn't he? And beating those two, otherwise he's in trouble. But I didn't put Bottas down as winning the title this year at the start of the year, and I'm not going to do it now. But he needs a run of form, does Bottas. But yeah, just disappointed because he looked so good in practice and then looked good right up to Q3, and it just didn't work. It just all kind of fell apart from there, didn't it? But Mercedes Day kind of fell apart in a space of about a minute, didn't it, today? So, and still they managed to recover to second. But should we get something a bit more positive? I will say this. I meant to say this when I was talking about it. Just on Bottas, Russell, or any incident in Formula One, just because two cars have collided doesn't always mean somebody has to be blamed. There's not always somebody at fault, and that which goes completely odds with what my grandma used to tell me. She used to always tell me there's no such thing as an accident, there's always somebody to blame. Quite pessimistic, obviously, was my grandma. But yeah, I don't think, not every single time there has to be somebody to blame. But anyway, Lando Norris, I didn't write McLaren off at the start of the weekend, but I thought they were going to struggle to keep pace with AlphaTauri, because I thought they were going to be absolutely incredible this weekend, and again, they look like they would be. I thought they'd be on pace with Ferrari, and that was kind of where they were today, but an absolutely superb drive from Lando Norris. And the little moments, and I'm not, it's a statement that will annoy some people because they'll maybe miss the point I'm making, but there were moments in that battle between Norris and Hamilton that just reminded me of Alonso and Schumacher in 2005. Let me finish before you start going, what are you on about comparing Lando Norris to Fernando Alonso? I just mean, at that stage, Alonso was a young driver. He was still it was his championship winning year, but that was his first attempt at a championship winning year. This just reminded me of Lando Norris, of Fernando Alonso, a young driver soaking up the pressure from a 7-time world champion. He didn't put a foot wrong. He could have easily been spooked, to use that phrase again, but in a different way to the one I meant about Russell, but he could have been easily spooked off the road by Hamilton, and he didn't. He just showed that he can fight him, and his defensive driving was absolutely spot on. It didn't cost him much time either, did it? Usually when we see these, with respect to McLaren midfield teams fighting with the top teams, they tend to end up losing time and sometimes hop out the way because it's not worth it in their race. But he did a great job to fend him off today, and that's kind of what I mean on the Alonso Schumacher thing. Just the fact that he didn't make a mistake, he didn't flinch, and in the end it was just DRS and a good overtake around the outside from Lewis Hamilton that got the move done. But I was impressed with Norris today. I'm really impressed with McLaren anyway, with their pace just generally so far this season, even though it wasn't amazing in Bahrain in terms of the result. They got some points on the board, which is important, but I think we saw more from McLaren, certainly from Norris today, of what we expected after testing, Dan. I remember doing the testing streams where they looked like the third fastest car, and that's kind of how they look with Norris today.
Yeah, and I think it's going to take a little while for Danny Rick to get up to speed, and he had his own issues today, just getting used to the car. But Lando, all weekend, has just looked a different level. So unlucky in qualifying. He did make the mistake. Track limits were there for everyone. Rightly so, he started 7th. But it was just I don't know about you. It was just great to see McLaren getting purple sectors right at the end of Q3. In a dry session, we have not seen that for such a long time. And in the race, pretty poor start, to be honest, for Lando Norris. Dropping back a few positions, contact with Stroll. He was mentioning after the race, yes, in theory, was lucky with the red flag and was one of those drivers that was able to put on a fresh set of tyres, try something different with the softs from other drivers around him. But he put himself in that position with that that mega double overtake, almost triple overtake right at the start of the race. I can't remember who it was on. I think it was Stroll and Gasly at the time. Please correct me if I'm slightly wrong there. But he just got his elbows out when he needed to. Nothing too dirty, nice and consistent. McLaren did the right thing, letting him past Danny Rick, and I'm sure Danny Rick wasn't too happy with that. But that enabled Lando to just get away a little bit, start catching up to those Ferraris. A great restart past Leclerc. At one stage, I thought maybe he could challenge Verstappen, and then we got to that fight with him and Hamilton. And commentary, Crofty and Brundle were very much in the camp of Lando needs to let Hamilton through, secure that third place, defend from the Ferraris. And he didn't. He made sure he kept Hamilton at bay, doing the right decision as well, staying in the middle of the circuit, not letting him go around the outside, not letting him dive down the inside, just positioning that car perfect. No mistakes under pressure, like you've just mentioned. Eventually had to let him through, but I think with 4 or 5 laps to go, he'd been defending for a solid 4 or 5 laps up against the might of Lewis Hamilton, who breezed past those 2 Ferraris. Just a real coming-of-age drive today, and a solid drive in Bahrain with P4, but a driver that, for a couple of years, I think most people recognise the talent and potential he's had, but sometimes with Lando, it would be one great weekend and then a couple of weekends where he goes under the radar a little bit, whereas this season, I think he's been maybe loosened a little bit with Danny Rick coming to the team, knowing that he's got an opportunity to lead this team. He is the man who's been there longest, the most experienced driver with McLaren there. And I don't know, he just seems to have come out of his shell just a little bit more this year, and he's driving just superb. No mistakes yet this season, apart from that little moment in qualifying. Made up for it today. And if the race was just a little bit shorter, that red flag was a little bit longer, very easily could have been P2. Great stuff.
Yeah, just on track limits as well. I do just want to, because you've touched on that in qualifying, I did actually see some people yesterday frustrated because Hamilton had gone beyond the white line at turn 15, the Variante Alta, and I think Perez was at turn 17. So a lot of people were annoyed, asking why Norris was penalised. Truth is, the track limits, and this is the problem with track limits, by the way, they weren't enforced at turn 17. So because the natural track limit there is the gravel trap, so if Perez had gone any wider, he's in the gravel, so they're not watching him then. And the exit of the chicane, turn 15, I think it's the red line which is defining the track limits there. So Hamilton, because he kept wheels between the red and the white line, he was fine. Whereas, and this is the problem, and I don't want to get too much into it again, because we did this last time, Dan, but there needs to be a hard, fast rule. Either we're enforcing track limits and it's at every corner, or we're not doing it at all, and that just avoids this confusion. But I just wanted to clear that up from yesterday. So, yeah, I was impressed with Norris today, and all weekend, like you say, would have been third. I thought he was going to nick pole down yesterday. And I know it got deleted, but there was just this moment. I even got a tweet ready to be like, oh my days, what is going on here? But no, a McLaren on pole would just, Ricciardo, Norris, whoever it is, would just absolutely blow my bloody mind when you consider where they were a few years ago. But great race, great defensive driving. Yeah, maybe, I suppose in terms of maybe pace, a mistake to go on the softs for Lando, but for the immediate aftermath, if you like, the safety car restart, it made sense because that soft tyre enabled him to get past Charles Leclerc, and as I said on Sky, that means then that Leclerc's got to do the hard work to then pass Norris rather than the other way around. So from a safety car restart point of view, perfect decision on the tyres. Maybe the mediums would have been a better one to be on for pace, but he wasn't exactly threatened by Leclerc. I know Leclerc got to within DRS a couple of times or for a few laps, but he never really looked like he was going to get past Norris, did he? So the tyre thing, not really an issue, but I just wanted to bring that one up. We'll talk about Ferrari in just a second. Daniel Ricciardo in a second. McLaren out-qualified Lando because that lap time was deleted, of course, but 6th place, he seemed content, maybe, in the Sky interviews afterwards and in his interviews after the race. I think seeing your teammate third on the podium is going to be difficult for a driver to take, but I think 6th place, second race in that car, 3 days of testing, I think he can be very happy with that. As Sainz can in 5th place, by the way, can both be very, very happy with that this weekend. And I think Ricciardo, he took one for the team today, did absolutely the right thing, because if he refused to let Norris through, Norris isn't on the podium today. So that was a really smart call from McLaren. I think Lando pulled out about 4 seconds in 2 or 3 laps, didn't he, Dan? Something like that. So it was the right decision.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we mentioned it earlier. I think all of these drivers that are moving to these new teams, it's going to take them a little bit of time. And I think Danny Rick, 6th place again, not bad at all. More points in his new team. No silly mistakes. No trips to the gravel like quite a few drivers were doing. But I think the biggest thing for him at the moment, and I think what's probably keeping him going at the moment, is that he's made the right choice to move from Renault to McLaren. He knows, especially yesterday in qualifying, there was potential in that car to be on pole position. No way is that Alpine anywhere close to pole position, just scraping through to Q3. And I think they're on 1 point so far this season. I know it's only been 2 races, but I think from a short-term perspective, Danny Rick's happy with that. And he will know, just like that first year with Renault up against Hülkenberg, initially, it was Nico who had the edge. Give him 5 or 6 races, and I think Danny Rick will be there or thereabouts with Lando Norris. But the pace is there. And whilst the title fight is very much going to be on between Red Bull and Mercedes, I just wonder if McLaren are going to be able to, kind of like we said over those winter testing streams, I wonder if they're going to be the team with Ferrari that are going to maybe try something a little bit different sometimes, kind of like what they did today with Norris on the soft tyres, and start to try and pick up those podiums when maybe Red Bull and Mercedes, focus more on each other, if that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, and I think the thing as well with these are good points for Ricciardo. 14 points, first 2 races. He's going to get better in that car. And we might look back, I said this last week about, the point for fastest lap for Valtteri Bottas. Obviously, 3 weeks later, it's not really worked very well from this time, has it? But, that point could be crucial. But 14 points for Ricciardo. He might look back at these first 2 races and say, do you know what? I wasn't at my best in that car. I was still finding my feet. But those 14 points have got us 3rd in the Constructors. They could be so important to the team. So he's doing what he needs to. And I think he'll be disappointed that he's not immediately on the pace with Norris. But I think, coming into a new team, he was never really going to be honest, especially with so little time to prepare for it. But I tend to agree with what you said there, Dan. I think he will get better. And he's doing the job he needs to do. In 6th place today, it's good points for McLaren in what's going to be an insanely close midfield fight, and a great fight with Ferrari today. Carlos Sainz, he said he came with the radio about halfway through, or it was either just before or just after the red flag or something around there, where he said, how many mistakes am I going to make today? He was so frustrated. He's 5th place, 1.4 seconds behind Charles Leclerc. He had a very good race today, and Charles Leclerc, superb again in qualifying yesterday, and absolutely nailed it in the race today. Good start as well. Got in the mix at not really at the front, but kind of just in behind there, and was keeping some good pace early doors. They're fantastic points for Ferrari. And it does feel nearly 3 decades of watching Formula One under my belt. It still feels really weird, despite how terrible 2020 was, to sit here and say 4th and 5th is an exceptionally good result for Ferrari. It feels really alien saying that.
Yeah, it still really is strange, isn't it? Much improved from last year is the main thing. And when you look at 2019, 2018, they were on the cusp of championships almost, except silly mistakes and Leclerc getting used to the car. But I think they're realizing now that this year isn't going to be fighting for a championship. It's not going to be fighting for victories. And if they can snatch a 4th and 5th, that is going to be a great result. Sainz, bless him, did seem to have every single issue under the sun in those first opening stages of the race. So many trips into the gravel. I thought he was out of the race at Tosa, like Lewis Hamilton was at one stage. Managed to keep it going and somehow just never seemed to dip out of the points. Never seemed that the incident was big enough to lose out on the points. And coming home with a P5, if things had gone a little bit more crazy in front of him, maybe even could have snatched a podium, was how things were going at the end of that race for Carlos Sainz. And Charles Leclerc, we were used to it last season, his consistency, but already this year, 2 P4s in qualifying, a fourth today. I think it was fifth or sixth, wasn't it, last time out in Bahrain? That's what they need. None of these chaos weekends from last year where cars were out in Q1, Q2, couldn't score points. They just need to be consistent. And I think of all the teams in that midfield, they seem to be the one, I would say along with Alfa Romeo, but I don't think they're quite yet. But Ferrari, firmly in that midfield as a team, seem to be the one that have made that biggest leap forward. Definitely in the fight with McLaren for P3. I'm just kind of gutted we didn't get a standing start because I was so looking forward to seeing Leclerc versus Verstappen. We didn't get to see it. And I think Charles will probably kick himself a little bit. He wasn't able to fend off Norris, but Norris was on the soft tyres. So how much could he have done about that? Not really too sure a lot. But fourth and fifth, like you said, it doesn't sound great for this team that are used to winning championships. But in the context of this season, it's not too bad at all.
Do you know, actually, now you've brought that up, how did you feel about the decision not to have a standing start? Because sort of usually under the red flag, they do a lap under the safety car, go to grid for a standing start. Do you think that... Because my feeling is that if that race had been bone dry, we would have had a standing start, but possibly Michael Massey thought drivers need to be going with tyres what's temperature. Obviously, the grid, one side might have been wetter than the other and maybe the right decision today, but I kind of agree with what you said there, Dan. It was a little bit disappointing because I do love a standing start.
Oh, yeah. From a selfish fan point of view, which I definitely am, I was gutted. I couldn't believe it. Silly Michael Massey. But I'm very much on board with what Massey's going with most of the time. Then he obviously knows more than any of us. There's plenty of things that we will never know what was going on at the circuit. And maybe they were still a little bit wary of the barriers down there just after that big incident with Russell and Bottas. Potentially that could have come into play, and it was still slippy there. I mean, we saw Russell's crash with Bottas, and very easily, if 3 or 4 cars are going abreast into turn 1, we could have seen multiple cars on the grass. So I understand a little bit why they did it, but yeah, definitely at the time, selfish fan came out in me, and I wanted to see that standing start.
Right, we'll get to Lance Stroll in just a sec. Do the super chats that have come in just for that first part of what we're talking about there. Razza, thank you very much for your contribution. Says Bottas-Russell racing incident, but completely avoidable. Neither would deliberately put the other into that position to crash at 180 miles an hour plus. Also, Lewis Hamilton's reversing out of the gravel, very smart instead of beaching it. Thank you very much, Razza, and some good points there. Just to clarify as well, reversing onto the track is not illegal. It's only illegal to reverse in the pit lane. So that's why people who are desperate for Hamilton to get a penalty, he's not going to get one because it's not illegal to reverse on the track. Lord Pidder, TJB, thank you very much. Says Alex Verts GPDA noted on commentary, there was a time when you were allowed to reclaim positions you lost during a safety car and wasn't sure if legal. Thank you very much for your contribution there. Interesting point. I think, the rules change in F1 too much, don't they? If it's confusing the likes of Alex Verts, then I think we don't stand a chance. Built 2JZ Lexus says, watch all the other passes. There was a lot more room given by everybody else. Thank you very much for your contribution, mate. Razza gave another one. Said, conspiracy. George bombs Bottas to ensure he looks worse than Hamilton, so George gets his seat for 2022 confirmed. Nico Rosberg explosion meme. Thank you very much. Get that tinfoil hat off. And Zach P says, if people get upset about Russell-Bottas exchange, ask yourself if you prefer the robotic drivers that only PR speak or real human emotions. Hockey fans will be cheering for a fist fight. But yeah, we don't need a fist fight. We've seen far worse in F1 scrapping, haven't we, Zach? But we don't need a fist fight. But yeah, it's emotions. We all get bored of the PR spiel, don't we? You know the answer. I did a news roundup on Saturday. Vettel saying that he's happy at the team at Aston Martin. You can check that out if you want to on the channel. It's up to you. Happy with the team, happy with their response, but at the same time, that's nice to hear. But he's not going to come out and go, God, this team's crap, and I can't believe how terrible their response has been. He's not going to say that. We know it's all PR, but that's the beauty of Formula One. Anyway, on the subject of Aston Martin, see what I did there? Very, very nice. Lance Stroll impressed me today. Actually, I mean, look, I get it. I'm always saying good things about Lance Stroll. You know, his dad bought me a yacht. I know he didn't really. He pays me off to say these things. But yeah, Lance Stroll impressed me today. That car isn't where Aston Martin wants it to be. They're quite open about that because they're not happy with the regulations. I'm sure we'll talk about that. That'll come up later on. But Stroll today, really good job. 7th place, more points on the board as well. Only 6/10 behind Ricciardo in the end, but he seemed to be involved. It seemed like every single time we went to the midfield to see some scrapping. Lance Stroll was either at the centre of it or just behind, watching it happen. It just felt like Lance Stroll was always involved. So I think he's a good result today, but not really a surprise. We've talked so much on this channel before about how he excels with cold tyres and in wet conditions. We saw it in Monza when he got on the front row, obviously after penalties, but he still was on the front row. We saw it at Turkey last year, of course, in the race until that pit stop decision from Racing Point. We know he can do that, so it shouldn't be a great surprise, but I think he raced really well today, and I think out of the two of them, I don't think there's much doubt. Let me know if you completely disagree in chat, but out of the two of them, Stroll and Vettel, Stroll is the one that's got to grips with that car. All right, he's been driving it for a year, but a lot of people thought Vettel was going to hop in that car and absolutely wipe the floor with him, and he's nowhere near at the minute. Stroll's doing a really good job. That's some really aggressive overtaking as well, but I actually know that's what I was going to say on Stroll. It's just hit me in the face, Dan. You can always tell. I'm not quite sure how he avoided the penalty for his move on Gasly, because he did go around the outside of Gasly at Tamburello and then completed the move by cutting across the gravel trap. I'm sure that was Stroll. Little bit of a surprise that didn't go down with the penalty, but other than that moment, question mark, pretty solid from him again today.
Yeah, I can't believe I'm going to say this about Lance Stroll, but just he seems to be consistent this year, something we're just not used to. But both races getting through to Q3, both races scoring points, and in a car that have a team that are, I don't know if you've noticed, but they're kicking up a little bit of a fuss about the rules and regulations about this year. He's just getting the job done. Scoring points in both races is something that he was starting to do last year, and then he had a bit of a rut about halfway through the season. And whereas he was, I think, in fourth place when we got to Mugello, it kind of just petered out at the end of the year and just about held on in the top 10 at the end of the season. This year, this car is not as good as last year's Racing Point, and yet Lance seems to be, I don't know, maybe a bit more of a complete driver. Maybe he's aware that, you know, Seb's coming in with this expectation that he's a four-time world champion. Maybe he's a little bit, like I mentioned with Lando and Danny Rick earlier, maybe Stroll's thinking that this is a chance for him to prove himself and say, look, Seb, this is my team. I have been a year. And so far, he has been the better of the two. Poor Seb, though, I don't think much went right for him today. So I don't want to beat him up too much because, bless him, everything seemed to go wrong, even before lights out. His brakes, like Lance's actually, were on fire, and he got hit with a 5-place penalty. But Stroll, I haven't seen, I don't know about you, mate, but I've not seen this incident with Lando Norris on the opening lap. Lando said it was a bit of a whack from Lance behind, but both of them coming away without damage, so I can't imagine anything too crazy. The Gasly incident, like you, I'm surprised. There doesn't even seem to be an investigation. So, yeah, questionable there from the FIA. But apart from that, Stroll doing exactly what he needs to be doing at the moment. And in a fight for what I'm going to assume is going to be about 6th or 7th in with Alpine and AlphaTauri. At the moment, Stroll's being one of the most consistent in that rear end of the midfield. So far, so good for the Canadian man.
Yeah, and that making a point there, just on what I was saying with Seb, it is only the second race. It is, and we do have to remember as well that last year Stroll started so well and still ended up well behind his teammate come the end of the season. So, or certainly compared to where he was. So, yeah, I mean, it's early days. Seb, I think somebody else has made the point as well. Apologies if I can't give you a shout out. I'll have a quick skim through now, see if I can spot you. But no, I can't see it. But somebody was saying that we need to be giving the new drivers and new teams 5 to 6 races. I've always said I tend to let a third of the season go before I start looking at drivers and saying you've been terrible and you've been brilliant. But Vettel's definitely got off to a difficult one today. 10-second. It was a stop go, wasn't it, for the tyres not been fitted to the car within 5 minutes of the warning. So that's not his fault. That's a team mistake, but quite odd given they wheeled him off the grid. You thought they'd have got him off a bit quicker if that was going to be an issue, but that kind of was it, wasn't it? 10-second penalty. Did finish the race in the garage, pulled over with a couple of laps to go with a gearbox issue. I know they had a gearbox sync issue, a gear sync issue, didn't they? The Aston Martin. So, yeah, just frustrating for Vettel. But no, I've not seen the incident with Stroll and Norris at all. I'll have a look afterwards. After the stream, I've not seen this incident, so that'll be interesting to see in the highlights later if it crops up, or when the inevitable million onboards turn up 3 days after the race, which we could all do with right before a reaction stream, but they tend to take a couple of days to come through. So no, I've not seen that one, but yeah, bit of an odd one. The Gasly incident, not to get a penalty for that, or to at least be asked to give the position back. But he had some good pace today, did Lance. I'm not gonna. Same with any driver. Same with Perez, as I said earlier. I'm not going to tear Vettel apart 2 races into his Aston Martin career, but I thought this weekend was looking better. He seemed to have some confidence coming into the weekend, despite what had happened in Bahrain. There were moments where he looked like he had some good pace, and Aston was sort of where we expected them to be, or closer to where we expected them to be, but he didn't hook it up in qualifying very well, did he? And his race, like I said, his race was pretty much done as soon as he got that stop-go penalty. It's 25 seconds driving through the pit lane, according to Mercedes, plus then a 10-second stop. That's 35 seconds. That's your race gone, isn't it? So just a disappointing start to the season for Vettel, but what do you make of, just super quickly, Dan, the Aston Martin complaints about the low rake disadvantage, bearing in mind that Mercedes, as Ted Kravitz said in his notebook, have had a win and a pole position in the first 2 races and have finished second today with Lewis Hamilton. So it doesn't seem to be affecting them too much.
Yeah, I just think it's a bit of a waste of time for them. As in, we're not going to change the rules this season. The only way they can be changed is on safety grounds, and that's not going to happen. So I just feel, take it on the chin. You had a great year last season. Even if things don't go too well this season, you get more time in the wind tunnel. You get more aero development for next year. So focus on 2022. That's a great opportunity for them to move further forward. Take this year as a season to get Seb on board, get him up to scratch. I just think it's all a bit of nonsense at the moment. It's going to be a difficult year for them, but if they get their heads down, they can beat AlphaTauri, they can beat Alpine. But all of this extra noise in the background, I don't know, maybe it's just me. I just think it's a bit too much, and they could focus more on the racing than the politics sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. Gabe also making a good point on Vettel there in chat. Says getting onto the mediums way too early also hurt Seb's race. It did. I think it took him a few laps before he said on the radio that now was the time to slicks, and he'd already been on them for a while. So, but yeah, just some good points we made in chat as well. Guardian of the Blind saying, I think it does affect Mercedes, but the Mercedes crushed the opposition last year. The Red Bull seems slightly ahead. Yeah, it does. There's definitely been, Mercedes have been hurt by it, but the way Otmar Safnau's talking, it's like the low rate cars are all at the back of the grid struggling, and they're not. 7th place for Stroll today, not where Aston want to be. Of course, they want to be higher up and challenging for regular podiums. I mean, like last year, they were so good as Racing Point, weren't they? But they want to be higher than that. They're not exactly a million miles away. So it just surprised me. There's quite a lot of fuss. But just on that, I can't imagine there'll be a change unless it does turn out the FIA and F1 have been conspiring to screw over Mercedes and Aston Martin, which I don't think they have. Then there won't be a change because the changes can only be made on safety grounds to aero regulations. So I think this is more to do with just having to make a bit of noise and make it clear that this isn't, or at least have excuses ready. It's not our fault. It's the regulations, and not that we've built a bad car. But, sorry to be that guy, but if you predominantly or copy predominantly somebody else's car and then the regulations change and it is to, let's put tinfoil hats on, it is to slow Mercedes down, then you inevitably will be affected. So design your own car. Anyway, Pierre Gasly, because it's that easy. It's just that easy. Design your own car. Pierre Gasly, 8th place. Kind of his race ruined a little bit, Dan, by keeping him on the wet so long. He was so slow. I think they said he was costing people behind him 8 seconds at one stage in that race because he should have been on the inters. They waited forever. Eventually did pit him to put him onto the intermediates, but you sort of think, well, why have you gone so long on that? I know it's so easy for us to sit as fans and make these decisions and whatnot, watching on TV and with the benefit of hindsight, but it just seemed really crazy that he was left on the wets for so long. Ocon got rid of his as soon as a safety car was out. He knew they weren't working, and that kind of is why, 10th place for Ocon today. I know Gasly's finished higher, but he could have been even higher. He could have been right up there with the McLarens and the Ferraris today had they not left him on those wet tyres. But in AlphaTauri's defence, because of the conditions at the start, the wet tyre might have been the right way to go. It's just after that, as soon as the track starts to dry even a little bit on the wet tyre and the standing water's disappearing, he's got to be in the pits, and they needed to react. And it's the Martin Brundle line, isn't it? You've got to be on the right tyres at the right time, and they weren't, and it cost them massively today. So I said when I went through the result that I think AlphaTauri will leave Imola disappointed. What do you think, Dan? Do you think they'll be gutted with that one? Because it should have been more this weekend on paper. Obviously, races aren't run on paper. I know.
I'm with you. I think we're disappointed for our Chain Bear predictions because we were both very much expecting them to have a great weekend. And I think their pace all through the weekends was looking like it was going to be a good one for them. Qualifying, obviously Yuki wasn't able to show his potential, but I felt he had a car and had the skills really to be able to fight back through. And he was having a great race up until about 10 laps to go, where it all fell apart. And for Gasly, if I'm fully honest, I don't understand why they decided to start him on the wet tyres. I get it for Ocon, just inside the top 10, take the gamble. I get it for Schumacher and Mazepin. We saw it last year in Hungary with the two Haas cars, with Grosjean and Magnussen started on the wets. They got penalties, but they scored points on that day, and that was only one of 2 occasions last year they scored points. But for Gasly starting 5th, I don't know. I think it was just too much of a risk at the time, and very, very quickly it became apparent they weren't the right tyres, but they were kind of in a bit of a conundrum. Do they take the hit, go on to the Inters and be 20 seconds behind in the pack? Or do they try and stick it out for wets, either hope it gets wetter or move to the slicks? And in all fairness to them, it fell away from them. There wasn't really a period where it went from wet straight through to slicks. There wasn't a period where it got wetter. So they were kind of boxed in and kind of had to take the hit at that stage. But I just feel they saw Ocon come in. I believe the two Haas cars came in as well. I know Mick had his little bit of an incident there as well. It's just disappointing for Gasly because both races he's qualified 5th. Both races, the race has very, very quickly gone away from him. And in a season where I think he has a car that has potential to do great things, he could have been in the mix for a podium today. A big mistake from the team on strategy has really let them down. But very easily, I know I'm no strategist for a Formula One team, but very easily, it could have been the other way around, couldn't it? It could have got wetted very early on, and we could look very silly now. He could be 20 seconds up the road, happy days. So it's a gamble. I just personally don't think they were in the kind of position starting 5th where they needed to take the gamble.
Wasn't it Germany 2018 where the track was not bone dry, but was certainly not wet weather tyres, and they brought him in and put the wets on? Toro Rosso at the time. So maybe he's just a sucker for the wet tyre. Maybe he just really likes the blue, something like that. But yeah, just on that point as to why maybe they started him on them. I mean, if he's gone round to the grid and said it's so wet in that first sector, I won't be able to keep it on the track. On Inters, maybe they've just played it safe just in case. But as soon as that standing water starts to clear, he's got to get rid of those tyres, and he didn't, and that's cost him today. But at the end of the day, 4 points. Yeah, all right, the Chamber predictions thing. I don't need the points that Tsunoda's going to pick up because I'm going to kick all your backsides anyway, so it doesn't matter. But yeah, I think they'll be pretty gutted with this weekend because it is a track that last year they were really strong at. They've got some good knowledge of the circuit with the work I said in the preview, with the work they've been doing on filming days. I know it's not the same as testing, but it's still laps, isn't it, on the board at a circuit that's not really that well known for a lot of the teams and drivers nowadays. But yeah, I expected more. Yuki Tsunoda seemed to be doing quite well, actually, coming through the field, having started down in 20th place for various reasons after that crash in qualifying, and then a load of penalties as well for new engine parts and all that business. But he seems to be doing all right to come through the field, but a sloppy spin, maybe a bit of inexperience there without sounding like a right condescending old fart or anything. I wouldn't even fit in one of these cars, let alone be able to drive one in the wet. So I'm not going to criticise him too much on that one. So yeah, a little bit of a mistake there late on. And then there's the 5-second penalty, I think it was as well, for exceeding track limits at turn 9. Could have been so much better for Yuki this weekend, but I don't think he's a rookie, isn't he? Same Mick Schumacher crashed today, weaving on the start. Finished straight, if we can call it a straight, warming his tyres, put it into the sort of the pit exit wall, didn't he? Sort of just at the pit exit. So rookies are going to make these mistakes in these conditions. So you cut them a little bit of slack, but a second moment of the weekend following that crash in qualifying, and just, I don't know. I can't help but look at 8th and 13th and be really disappointed with AlphaTauri. They were my team to watch coming into this weekend, and I still stand by the fact, based on what we saw in qualifying and the pace we'd seen in practice, that had things maybe stayed dry for like the 3rd time in this video, they didn't, but had they stayed dry and Yuki hadn't have had that crash in qualifying, they would have picked up a lot more points and maybe could have been 3rd fastest. It would have been tough to fight off McLaren today, though, but just disappointed, as I am. But I think Yuki will learn. He seems pretty rapid, doesn't he? Does Tsunoda, but then we know that from F2, don't we, Dan, from last year? He's a quick guy. Obviously helped if you're running wide at turn 9 constantly a little bit, but yeah.
Yeah, and even in today's race, yesterday was disappointing. He was making up positions. He was looking really, really good. But you mentioned it there. Rookie mistakes, which he is totally entitled to do, did cost him today. But this time last year, George Russell under the safety car binned it. We all gave him a pass, and I think we can do the exact same for Yuki and the exact same for Mick. And to be fair to Mick, I know as a Grosjean fan, Grosjean did that a little bit later on in his career for a Haas, and not in wet conditions. So I think he can get away with that one.
Just having a check while we come on to Kimi Räikkönen, see if there's any news on the investigation. Apparently, safety car infringement. Just quick, I guess, breaking news. Stroll and Gasly are now with the stewards over an incident at turn 2 on lap 11. And that apparently, according to Chris Medland, was the one where Stroll... it's when Stroll passes Gasly but cuts turn 3. Yes, the Stroll might be in trouble for that one. We'll keep an eye on that, see if that happens. But also, yeah, Kimi Räikkönen, safety car infringement. He's under investigation as well. Not sure what that is. But 9th place as it is at time of streaming, Dan. Good race for Kimi. It's one of those races where experience was always going to be a massive benefit, wasn't it? Out on track today. And I think Kimi, couple of points on the board for Alfa Romeo. Is that their first of the season?
Yeah.
For Alfa Romeo. So
12 last time out, yeah.
Yeah. So a decent race. He got involved in a bit of, wheel-to-wheel stuff, didn't he? Some overtaking done. We didn't tend to see... I don't know if it's just that I am conditioned against looking at Alfa Romeos, but I don't think we see an awful... I get loads of pictures from XBB of Alfa Romeos, but I never seem to see enough of them on track to sort of explain how they've ended up where they are. But Kimi raced well today. We did see some overtaking. Experience is key, and it's a couple of points on the board. So obviously Kimi is a realistic guy. He knows that car isn't going to be challenging for wins and podiums. He'll want it to, but he knows it won't. But I think he could be happy with P9.
Definitely can be happy with P9. It's, I think, a real statement from this team that scored, I think, 8 points, was it, last year, 4 apiece. The fact that they're scoring points in the second race of the season and last time we're on the fringes of points is great for them, proving that there really is progress with that team. And I was a bit nervous after last season because things weren't looking so good. Kimi still got it, which is great. I mean, I can't believe now he's in his 3rd season with Alfa Romeo. I thought for so many years he was going to retire at Ferrari. So the fact that he's still scoring points, still wants to fight as hard as he can, is fantastic. I do feel for Gio today because this, of course, is a big year for him if he wants to keep that seat. There are so many Ferrari juniors still in F2, still on the fringes of F1. And I think he kind of needs these points a little bit more at his stage, or this stage in his career. Unlucky with some sort of brake issue. I'm not 100% sure on what it was. And that did cost him points today. But so many times for Alfa Romeo, we see that Gio is there or thereabouts. And then right at the last second, Kimi nicks it from him. And it's another story about that today. But for Alfa Romeo as a team, great for them to score points. And I think this kind of guarantees them in front of Williams and Haas now. I think Williams will eventually score a point, but they're very much kind of in their own little bubble and in front of Alpine at the moment. So not bad at all.
Gio was kind of with him, wasn't he, up until that brake issue as well?
Yeah.
Gio seems to just, his first season was okay. I didn't think he was anything special, but then the last couple of seasons, he's always been sort of thereabouts with Kimi, hasn't he? So a bit disappointed for that brake issue for him, but I'm glad you mentioned that because that was on my my notes just to mention, because one thing I did catch was Gio had a brake issue, came in, they took something off the rear brakes, and then he went straight back out again, so nothing major there. We have got some news on the Russell Bottas incident. It has been investigated by the stewards, and they've decided no further action. I shall read you this. I love reading these. They're so incredibly interesting. The stewards, blah, 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 blah. They've gone through it all. So, car 63 with a significant speed advantage. He moved to pass on the right. As the cars approached the kink of turn 1, the gap between them and the right-hand side of the track decreased. At no time did either car manoeuvre erratically. The track appeared to be not especially wet through turn 1, but at the point of closest approach to the right-hand side of the track, the right-hand side tyres of car 63 hit an especially damp patch. Lovely wording. And the car snapped. I thought I said yeeted, but it says yawed. Bearing in mind... that the car had low downforce in the rear with the DRS, as we were saying a bit ago, DRS open. Stewards concluded the accident was a racing incident, considering the conditions, and take no further action. Competitors reminded to appeal, blah, 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 blah. So basically what we were saying earlier, the trackers, either through the track narrowing or some movement, whatever, the tracker's narrowed on the right. He's caught a damp patch, possibly the grass, possibly the white line, and then it's I'm now going to say yeeted into the side of Valtteri Bottas. It said yawed, and that was kind of that. So racing incident officially, that was decided. Stewards are still investigating Stroll and Gasly, and are investigating Kimi Räikkönen. If that comes through alive, I will let you know. And thank you to Andre as well for your contribution on PayPal. If you do send me any contribution on PayPal, always appreciate it, of course. Do send a message just to say hi, if nothing else. It's always good to read something out, but thank you very much for your contribution now. I'll do some more super chats in a bit. Esteban Ocon, Fernando Alonso, 10th and 11th point for Esteban today. Alpine's first point of the season, of course, after a bit of a miserable Bahrain. But Ocon has had, in my opinion, a really good weekend. It's only 1 point, but he out-qualified Fernando Alonso. He's beaten him in the race. I know Alonso had a few spins and it was only by about 0.8 of a second, but you know, less than a second behind Raikkonen, could have been on for a couple of points if he'd have got a move done, a couple more laps maybe. But really impressed with Ocon this weekend. A good step forward again for him. But I've got a question for you, Dan.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah.
I'm ready.
So I've always highly rated Stoffel Van Dorn. Right?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Right, I'm with you.
I don't know if I mentioned that. But if I've always highly rated Stoffel Van Dorn and he got absolutely destroyed by Alonso, if Ocon were, I know it's only been one race, but if Ocon were to beat Fernando Alonso this year, does that mean I have to be an Ocon fan and rate him more highly than Van Dorn?
I'm cool with you being an Ocon fan, and then hopefully I can bully you like you bullied me for years about being a Grosjean fan. I'm with you though. Really, he needed this weekend, didn't he? Last time out qualified by Alonso, out in Q1, bit of a stinker in qualifying. In the race, hit by Sebastian Vettel, not his fault, but not ideal. Fernando very much, for me anyway, seemed like he was in control of the team. This weekend, very different story. I know Fernando himself didn't have a great qualifying, out qualified by both Williams. Ocon making it through to Q3. And in the race, Ocon, we mentioned it earlier, starting on the wet tyres, pretty much from lights out, was on the disadvantaged strategy, had to come in and put on the inters, worked his way back through the field. Alonso, not his day at all. Several spins, had an incident in the barriers before we even got going today. Definitely a race for him to forget on a circuit where you'd think Alonso would be pretty nifty around Imola, considering his past. But Ocon, he needed this. Not only it's his first point, it's the team's first point of the season. And I think he's just clawed back. I think respect is maybe a bit too extreme of a word, but certainly I think Alonso and the team will be aware that Ocon does mean business this year and he wants to be the future of this team. Whereas over the winter, and definitely after last weekend, I think a few people were thinking maybe Ocon needs to be moved on. Of course, you know, the season's long and very easily Fernando could bounce back next time out in Portimao. But Ocon's now had a year under his belt, and we certainly saw last season that he got better and better and better as the season went on. And I think we could see a similar story with Alonso this year, but I think Ocon as well. I think he will aim for higher up and maybe even a podium like we saw in Sakir. But at the moment, I think the big thing for Alpine this weekend is those upgrades. I think anyway, that went on the car this weekend seem to be an improvement. They seem to be a bit more racy than last time out, even with all the carnage that was going on.
100%. Oh, that it's not quite night and day, the apparent difference in pace, but you can definitely see there's been an improvement in the Alpine with those updates. So they've got that right, but they're not where they want to be, are they? Obviously, I know there was some chaos today. Alonso had quite a few spins, but yeah, I mean, Alonso's day kind of ruined, not ruined, but you kind of got the feeling it wasn't going to be Alonso's day when he crashed on the way to the grid. I mean, it wasn't a massive accident or anything like that, but going off at Tozer like Lewis Hamilton did and just tagging the wall back to the pits for front wing. But I mean, on that, the laps to the grid before the race, 25 minutes before the race even started, we'd had a puncture for Bottas, brakes on fire for Stroll, a brake-by-wire failure for Sebastian Vettel, which was sort of on the grid more than anything. I think, yeah, we went through that, didn't we, with Vettel? And Alonso put it in the wall and broken his front wing. So we probably should have known it was going to be like this, Dad, to be honest. But yeah, I think Alpine have made a step forward this weekend. And if there's more parts for Portimao, which I think there probably will be. I think we're going to see a lot of updates between sort of now. I think Ferrari have said up to June or the end of June, they're going to be doing updates on their car and then focus on 22. So I think that's probably what we're going to see from a lot of the midfield teams. Updates up to sort of June, end of June, and then start to focus on 22. So I think we'll see a lot between now and then. So good step forward for them. Really happy for Ocon. First driver to out-qualify Fernando Alonso since Stoffel Van Dorn. So yeah, really, really good from Ocon this weekend. I think Alonso, he didn't finish in Bahrain, so he's probably going to be happy to have got to the flag this time. So it's a step in that direction. I'm just pleased to see them with some pace because I thought they'd do better than that. I thought they'd be dark horses this year a little bit, to be honest. But long way to go, of course. Potentially 21 races, assuming they replace Canada if that does get cancelled. We've talked about Vettel just on that brake-by-wire issue as well. He had to start from the pit lane. Mick Schumacher, Nikita Mazepin for Haas. Mick Schumacher, we kind of touched on that crash under the safety car. Frustratingly for him, and in some ways it's he crashed the car, so I don't like to say it's bad luck because he's caused that crash, but the fact that he crashed his car and then his crash meant that the pit entry had to be closed, which means he couldn't pit to fix his front wing, was just absolute. I mean, that's terrible luck, if you want to call it that, isn't it? To end up in that situation where your front wing is stopping you being able to pit for repair. So that cost him, not massively because the safety car was out, but Haas were never going to be. I'll tell you what, Stan, Haas did what they needed to today. Chaotic race, they finished it. That's what they need to do. If we've got a chaotic race, Haas have got to get their cars to the end because they might be able to nick a point. But yeah, a bit frustrating there for Schumacher, but okay pace from him again this weekend. He's going to keep learning as the season goes on. Nikita Mazepin, sloppy in practice, moment in qualifying with Giovinazzi, which has upset everybody. But actually, I think he had maybe not a spin, but I know he went off at turn, I always forget what it's called, Aqua Minerale, went off down there fairly late on, but, you know, he got it to the end, which is, people will laugh, but it is progress, because in Bahrain, he only got to turn 3. So at least he's finished the race this time, so it's a step forward for whatever that's worth.
Yeah, that's what we said in Bahrain, wasn't it?
Yeah.
The main goal for him was to finish. He still had plenty of spins. He was actually super lucky to finish, considering the contact with Latifi on lap 1. Very lucky boy to not end up in the barriers and keep going. I'm concerned at the pace. I thought he would be closer to Mick Schumacher. I think he finished about a minute behind at the checkered flag. And when you consider that Mick did have that issue with the front wing, slightly concerning. That I think all he needs now is a clean weekend. And I think for Mick and his mistake, he's in the right car at the right time to make these mistakes. You know, he's not going to be fighting for points. No way is he going to be fighting for wins or podiums. So he's got a year this season to make these mistakes, to learn how Formula One works. We said it last time in Bahrain. By finishing that race, he got his first race start, his first race distance, his first race or behind the safety car. Today, both drivers got a chance to race in wet conditions, do a wet start, and all of these things right now will be disappointing that they've not scored points, disappointing that he's lost his front wing behind the safety car. When he is in a position to challenge, hopefully next year, all of that's going to help him out massively. So it's disappointing, but as you mentioned, I think the bigger thing for them at the moment is to finish the race and hopefully for them, not lose a couple of front wings next weekend, because at the moment that seems to be happening quite often for both drivers.
Yeah, and just thank you for bringing up the Mazepin Latifi incident. I'd totally forgotten about that. It was quite a nasty accident actually for Latifi, wasn't it? Social media decided that was Mazepin's fault and he should be locked up for life. That was Latifi all day long for me. I will not blame Mazepin for that incident with Latifi. Latifi came back on track, came across. Mazepin was sort of coming alongside him. Latifi's either not looked or, as Joe, I would assume not looked, to be honest. I'm not going to say Latifi would deliberately do that. They've come together and Latifi's had the accident. I don't know why that's Mazepin's fault for some people, but I've watched the onboards, I've watched the replays on TV, and to me that is, if you have to apportion blame, it goes to Latifi.
Yeah, there was nowhere Mazepin could go, was there? There was so much spray. It was carnage all over the shop. And actually, I was surprised there wasn't more incidents on that opening lap, to be honest with you. But I'm definitely on board with you. Nothing Mazepin could do there, really. And lucky to get away without any damage himself, really.
I mean, he could have put the brakes on. There was nobody behind him. Let's be honest. But
that
you know,
is true. Yeah.
at the same time, he shouldn't have to. He should just, you know, I mean, you should never assume anything in life. But you know, he would have assumed that Latifi would have been looking where he was going, coming back on. So, it's not. I don't think it's a big deal. It was a nasty accident for Latifi. Could have been much worse, of course. But still, I'm not putting the blame at Mazepin's door there. And we will talk again just briefly about Russell. And Latifi as well, just down at Williams. I mean, Latifi had a fantastic weekend up to that point. He is up there with Ocon as the driver who I was most impressed with across the weekend. He showed good pace through all of Friday, showed good pace through Saturday, got into Q2 for the second time, I think, in his career. Looked like he was on the pace of Russell. Russell just had a bit too much for him, as it turned out in Q2, but, you know, got through. Seems to have taken a big step forward, Latifi, this weekend. Obviously helped by the fact the car is better than it was last season. They've definitely taken a step as well, Williams. Really impressed with Latifi. And Russell as well, even, you know, prior to the Bottas incident, he's in the points and he's fighting with a Mercedes that shouldn't be down there, but he's fighting with a Mercedes for 9th place in a Williams. And there was a little moment, I mean, in was it Q2, where he was 10th on the medium tyre? And I thought, no. No way have Williams come that far in a weekend. So I think as a team, they'll leave very disappointed because of the incidents. They'll be gutted not to have got any points. They've got one hell of a repair bill. But in terms of forgetting those incidents for a moment, in terms of the rest of the weekend and the pace they've demonstrated, they'll probably be happy that there appears to have been a step forward. But at the same time, and I'm sure the press release will come through soon, at the same time, I can't imagine I'm going to be reading in that press release that they're really thrilled with the weekend, because ultimately they've got to find the money to pay for these damages. And it just didn't end the way it started. But there are, I suppose the point I'm making, Dan, is although it was a frustrating and disappointing end, there are positives to take away from the weekend, which does feel odd to say given the crashes.
Yeah, progress is definitely being made with that car. I mean, 2 years ago when it was Russell and Kubica, not even a sniff of getting off the back row of the grid. So the fact that they got through to Q2, almost Q3 with George Russell is mega. And I think we've said it quite a few times. Latifi definitely went under the radar last year. Wasn't spectacular by no means, but wasn't terrible. And I think this weekend, qualifying certainly his best weekend in Formula One. The race... just unlucky in those kind of conditions. There was always going to be at least one car that ended up in the wall at the end of lap one. A little bit silly that he didn't notice Mazepin, didn't look. We're not 100% sure there. And he'll definitely be frustrated that he's come away with his car in the barriers, because this could have been a day where they did score points. And Russell himself was so close. I know we spoke about that incident a little bit earlier on. But progress is being made. That's the main thing. Whether this is one of those weekends that they mentioned in winter testing, that this is one of those tracks where they wanted to score points. I know they said they built their car this year to go very heavy on certain weekends to aim for points. Other weekends, leave it as a write-off. I'm not too sure if this circuit is extreme enough one way or another in terms of max top speed or high downforce. I don't think it is. It's a bit more of a middle of the road. So in that sense, great for the team that they're in the mix, because definitely if things had gone a little different today, they could have scored points. And 12 months ago, I don't think they were in a position to be saying that.
We'll come to driver of the day in just a second. Please do drop a like on the stream. Always appreciated, of course. We are at 401 likes, 1,600 watching. They're a little bit higher with people watching earlier. Tends to be the way when we get to the midfield that some people sort of disappear. Bye to those who have gone. Thanks for popping along. Bit late now, they've gone, Sean. Yeah, please do leave a like. Always appreciate it. Let's see if we can get that well over 500 today. I don't know why streams don't tend to do very well on likes compared to videos, but just the way it is, always appreciate. You can contribute as well. We're going to get to Q&A very quickly in a few. You can contribute through Streamlabs, PayPal, all of that business is in the description down below. And don't forget to subscribe as well. Lots coming up this season. Heads up. I know 3 people this is going to annoy immediately. No debrief tomorrow. So apologies for that one, but yes, there'll be videos this week coming up and through the rest of the season. Like I said at the start, the season's going to kick on now. We had that 3-week break, but it's pretty much a race every week or every other week now until 12th of December. So lots to come. So please do drop a like and subscribe as well. Always appreciated. Let me know then in chat, one surname, who is your driver of the day? Norris got the official one. Daniel Racing Reviews I called you Daniel. You don't like that. Let's hold off now.
I know, that was strange. Don't do that again.
Danny boy, racing reviews. Who's your driver of the day, mate?
I'm surprised you're letting me go first after last time, but I'll take it. I'm going to be boring and say Lando Norris. I'm sorry because that's the obvious one, and you're going to have to think out of the box now. But for me, didn't put a foot wrong today. We spoke about it at length earlier, but a disappointing qualifying after being so close to pole position. A little mistake cost him so much. P7 to a podium, pretty much on merit as well in the McLaren. Great job fending off Lewis Hamilton. I don't really think you could ask for much more today.
Yeah, well, you haven't taken mine. I'm going to go with Nikita Mazepin.
You're not that brave.
I'm not that full of shit either. No, I think Norris is a great shout. I think you're right on pace as well today. All right, there'll be people that say if Perez and Bottas had been on form, he wouldn't be there, but that would still have been 5th place. Do you know what I mean? So he had a really good race. I won't pick him then because you've gone with him. So I'm going to... Hamilton's recovery was great, but I'm not going to give him driver of the day. I've said this before because he put it in the wall at Tozer, did get out, but yeah. It's got to be Verstappen, surely. Faultless. I know Norris is a surprise in many ways in 3rd place. Maybe not for some, but certainly start of the weekend, I didn't think podium for McLaren. But I think Verstappen was absolutely faultless today, apart from that one moment under the safety car. So, yeah, Max. I mean, maybe... Yeah, because even in the early phases of the race, when Hamilton was coming back at him, he was still quick. He was able to get out of his pit stop with the dry tyres on and get up to speed relatively quickly. Yeah, Verstappen for me. But if you want me to look away from the top 3, I know some people get frustrated when we're always picking the top 3. Aside from them, I'd probably say... Ooh, that is tough. Possibly...
Raikkonen? Did he start 18th to 8th?
Yeah, could have done. I can't remember if Raikkonen started. It was something like that. So 18th to 9th, that would be a good shout. But maybe Leclerc as well. If you throw Norris in there, he had good pace today. He wasn't a million miles away from a podium. So there was some really good drives today. Verstappen, Hamilton's recovery, Norris was really good. Leclerc, yes, Sainz had his incidents, but he also drove well to get 5th. Ricciardo, I probably wouldn't because I think a bit off the pace. Stroll, possibly a penalty coming his way if the stewards deem him that way. Not really Gasly. I think to recover to 8th or to get 8th out of it is probably good. I think a lot of drivers had really good races. And I mean, if you want my driver of the weekend, I'd be tempted to say Ocon. But now that I've said that I've got to be an Ocon fan, that's it. I'm just going to always have to say Ocon, aren't I, for driver of the weekend?
You've got yourself stuck now.
But yeah, no, I think Verstappen for me for driver of the day. There's so many though. I genuinely do, Dan. I'm not just saying that as a cop out. I really do think there were a lot of really good drives this afternoon, and yeah, what a chat saying. Probably all saying Mazepin. Larry Lou wants to talk about Vettel. I'll just remind me, Larry, in a bit, and we'll have another word on Vettel if you want us to talk about anything in particular. We kind of went over him. It's difficult to come down too hard on them, Aston Martin at the minute, because it's not where it should be. But yeah, we'll try and talk about Vettel in a bit again. I've lost my drivers of the day. Why haven't they? Oh, it's because I've gone too far back. Leave me alone. Jamie says Norris. Thank you very much, mate. Sandro says Norris as well. Professional Moron says Norris. Mark says Lando. Emily's gone with Lando. Hamilton's driver of the day for John. Norris for Maxim. Coolio's gone with Lewis. Norris for Speed Rush. Bottas for DRD. Nobody. Zephyr says Hamilton surely of the driver of the day. Surely. To have the mental strength to come back from almost being out to claim P2. Norris all day long for Annette. I think we can see where this might be going down. XML says Norris. Tom, Maxim, Baden, Josh, Michael all saying Norris. Mylander for IM3 GTR. Why not? John's gone with, I think I said yours actually, John, for Hamilton. Halo Gamer's gone with Kimi Raikkonen. Stefan for Verstappen. Norris for Mark. Ben's gone with Carlos Sainz. Maxim's gone for Norris. Nightcrawler's gone for Hamilton. Hamilton for Gamer McLife. Lando for PFL Sorrow 73. Lando for Sylvia. For Maxim. For Ash. For James. I think you're basically saying Norris. A few people saying Hamilton as well, which is fair enough. Micah says Leclerc. Yeah, most people Norris. Most people have gone for Norris on that one. Not a great surprise. I'm just trying to spot somebody a bit different. Pem says Sainz. Yeah. I'm not surprised to see Raikkonen there again. I think I've said Halo as well, but yeah, I think most people go for Norris there. A few people saying Leclerc and Hamilton as well. A few saying Sainz too, which I think is fair. But yeah, I know what people are saying about Hamilton coming back, but I just, he made the error. It's not a Hamilton hate thing. It's a consistent thing that I always say when it's why Sainz won't get driver of the day for me, because he made too many mistakes, even though he was fifth. Without those mistakes, could have been a podium. If you see where I'm coming from with that one, Dan, and without his mistake, Hamilton could have been challenging for the win today, and he wasn't. He was second. So I get what people are saying and why they're backing them, but for me, Verstappen was faultless. He says as the picture of Verstappen getting it wrong under the safety car appears on screen. That, ladies and gentlemen, is called timing. Thank you so much, OBS, for screwing me over there. Lots of people will be saying Norris, and I totally get it. Very well deserved. Just some great drives in general. We've got some more super chats to do before we get on to Q&A, as my Streamlabs has a moment. Oz, thank you very much. That might be the one that catered on PayPal, actually. It says, I think Charles didn't have any radio since red flag, so he might have got through. It was a standing start. Might have thought it was a standing start. I'm not sure on that one, but thank you very much for your contribution. I'll look at that afterwards. I'm not sure. And Ruby says, I hate to say it, but Alonso shouldn't have come back, in my opinion. That seat should have gone to a new up-and-coming driver. As I dropped my phone in shock there, Ruby, on that one. Just while I have a look at these decisions then, Dan, Stewards' decisions, if any have come in, discuss what Ruby's saying there, that Alonso shouldn't have come back, it should have gone to a young driver.
Oh, this is
I love you, mate.
Thank you. I'm torn, because I think there's a lot of drivers that are not on the grid this year that should be on the grid. I think Alonso's still got the capability of being a great driver. I think, last time out in Bahrain, he seemed to jump back in that car and do great things. This weekend, it wasn't so good. I think the difficulty for me here is the young drivers, because yes, they've got three pretty awesome drivers in F2. We've got Guan Yu Zhou in his third season, who won the feature race in the first race of the season. He's looking strong this year. But was he ready for that Renault/Alpine seat this year? I don't think so. Same story with Christian Lundgaard. And then you've got the big question mark of, is Oscar Piastri ready to go straight from F3 through to F1? And I think that's a bit too much of a risk, especially with Ocon, who had a okay season last year. But do you want to put all the pressure of him being the number one driver on straight away? I'm not too sure you do. So I think bringing Fernando back is worth the risk. They want a superstar driver. They lost Danny Rick. The only other option available for them last year could have been Sebastian Vettel. And I think if you're going to choose out of Alonso and Vettel, it's almost a bit of a 50-50 at the moment. So I'm not going to have a go at Renault. Personally, I think they'd have been better off with a Hülkenberg, but that's because I love Nico Hülkenberg and I will always love Nico Hülkenberg. Maybe even a Grosjean or a Magnussen if I really want to start getting silly. But I think they did the right thing by signing Alonso, considering the situation they were in.
It's funny, actually, because I was not necessarily of the same opinion as Ruby, but I was frustrated that we had, we've got Raikkonen on the grid. I love the guy, but we've got Kimi on the grid. He's 907. You've got Fernando Alonso coming back, and then you look at these drivers we've got in F2 that are really good. You think, I want to see a Guan Yu Zhou in that Alpine, or I want to see a Callum Ilott get a shot in the Alfa Romeo. But at the same time, F1 is supposed to be the pinnacle of motorsport. We want the best drivers. Alonso is still one of the best drivers in the world. There's no doubt. On his day, I think, you put him in a Mercedes, a Red Bull. I know you could easily argue that, put anybody in the Red Bull or a Mercedes, they're going to do well. Please note, Albon, Bottas not always doing brilliantly, but that's not an attack. I'm just making a point. But I think you put Alonso in one of them cars, he's right in the title fight. So that's how I view it. But when I look at how last year ended in F2 with Zhou, he was a little bit inconsistent towards the end of it. I think Lundgaard, I'm a really big fan of Lundgaard. I'm not going to say I rate him because that'll be his career over. I'm a big fan of Lundgaard, but I don't think they're quite ready. And I think if I had the choice between taking a gamble, like you said there, Dan, on having Ocon as number one and bringing through a Lundgaard or Zhou, or have Alonso for a couple of years to help, especially with the big rules change in 22. Experience could be so important in that. I think I'd have gone with Alonso. So, breaking news. I'm going to make a graphic for these streams that either just goes penalty or breaking news or something at some point. Lance Stroll cops a 5-second time drop before leaving track and gaining an advantage. That puts Pierre Gasly to P7 and Stroll P8. That's from Philip Horton on Twitter from Motorsport Week. So there you go. Stroll has been given a penalty for that. I was going to say it's weird that he didn't get one, but so much was going on. Maybe that was missed by the stewards. So he drops to, what did I just say? It promotes Gasly to 7th and drops Stroll to 8th. So he's lost a point. Or a couple of points. So that's frustrating for him, but I'm not totally... I'm more surprised it wasn't picked up on than I am that he's got the penalty. That's no great surprise there at all for me. Nothing at the moment, though, from Kimi Räikkönen. So whatever this safety car infringement was, I'll just have another double check on the FIA. Oh, trying to stream and navigate FIA.com. It's like Mercedes. Mercedes are one of the quickest teams out there. They pride themselves on their speed, but my God, does it take a week to download anything from their website? It's absolutely... That's where all their money's gone. It's gone on the car and not on the website, which is fine. You can completely understand that. That's a joke, of course. Nothing on Raikkonen. So Car 8's got his. I would assume... Have we got anything on Raikkonen at all?
I'm not seeing anything yet.
So what does the summons say? We'll just have a look and see what this summons says. On Raikkonen before we talk about Vettel a little bit as well. But the summons on Raikkonen just says alleged rolling restart procedure infringement. So nothing's been confirmed on that yet. But yeah, penalty for Stroll. No great surprises there. Yeah, Sebastian Vettel. Somebody wants to talk about Vettel. We did talk about him when we were talking about Aston Martin earlier and the disappointing race. Unless I've missed something down that I should have maybe picked out for him. Obviously, he had the brake-by-wire issue on the way to the grid, as I recall. Yeah, it was Lance Stroll's on fire, wasn't it? And then Vettel reported a brake-by-wire issue to try to fix that. He then had to start from the pit lane because they didn't have time to fix the car on the grid or finish fixing it. He then got a 10-second stop-go penalty for not having tyres fitted or wheels fitted at the 5-minute warning. But I think, in fairness to Vettel, prior to that penalty and prior to going on to dry tyres, he was making some good ground up, wasn't he, to recover in the race. He wasn't flying through the field, but he's not going to in the Aston Martin in a midfield that's really close. But he was making progress and defending when he needed to and getting the moves done he needed to. But that switch to the dries when they changed him to the dries and the penalty, that was his race done, whatever happened, wasn't it?
Yeah, I do feel for Seb today because anything that could have gone wrong pretty much did go wrong. But something that we just didn't see last year was him getting his elbows out. And it seemed more often than not, for whatever reason, he was just stuck with Kimi Räikkönen. And those two were being happy buddies, seemed to be rolling around together, not overtaking each other, stuck in the midfield pretty much for the entirety of 2020, except Turkey. So the fact that today, I think we did see a bit more of the old Sebastian Vettel, if you will, where he wasn't afraid to get his elbows out. I believe it was Sergio Perez he made contact with into turn one. Aggressive defending, but considering what we saw of Seb last year, I'm all for it. He really wants to make an impression with this team. From what we can tell from the media and little snippets of press releases we see, he seems to be raring to go for this challenge. And I think he's here for the long-ish term. And even, teething issues so far. We've said it with all the other drivers. Give these guys a little bit of time to settle into these cars. Already, I think, from qualifying, we saw an improvement from last time out, and I think that will slowly build. It's not the best car on the grid. They're going to be in a scrappy fight in that midfield all season long, but improvements are being made. And I think the incident with Ocon in Bahrain, already that Seb, he's starting to learn with this team, and I think things will improve over time.
Yeah, I agree. And I think there is an expectation with him being a 4-time world champion that he should be able to hop into a car and adapt immediately. I don't necessarily agree. He has to adapt over time, but I think he should be given the same courtesy that Ricciardo's going to get at McLaren and who else? Sainz at Ferrari. You've got it, and Perez at Red Bull. You've got to give them some races to get up to speed and get used to a new team, a new car, and it's not the same as previous seasons where we've had 8 days of testing. They've had 3 days, and we know how interrupted Aston Martin's testing was because they had a shocker in Barcelona. We weren't in Barcelona, we were in Bahrain for testing, and they didn't have not a brilliant weekend in Bahrain. So I think give him a few races like we will for everybody else, and then we can start to look at where he is. But it's nobody can deny it's been a disappointing start, to say the least, for Vettel. But I didn't expect him to hop in that car and start getting back to the Seb we knew, but I thought he would. I was expecting a little bit more from him early doors, but I was expecting more from Ricciardo early doors. The difference is Ricciardo's picked up 14 points, Vettel's got nothing. So, do you know what I mean? I think we just have to give Sainz and Ricciardo and Perez and Vettel a little bit of time before we start tearing them down. Of course, lots of people in the F1 work community will give them that time. There'll be some people that won't, but I think you have to breathe. A lot of people in my comments and on social media sort of after one race in Bahrain saying, oh, that's it. See, Vettel's done. He's never going to get up speed in this car. It's like, guys, it's been one race. Let's calm down. It was like Perez after qualifying in Bahrain. It's like, oh, see, he's no better than Albon. It's like, it's been one race, one qualifying session. Chill out. Let's see how we get on. And he recovered brilliantly in that race and got it on the front row today until it all fell apart for him. But yeah, got to give him time. I think some drivers, and correct me if you disagree, Dan, but I think some drivers will be given more time than others. So, for example, people might give Ricciardo a bit more time to get up to speed at McLaren, or accept a bit more time than perhaps Vettel will be given at Aston Martin, not by the team, but by fans. I think that 4-time world champion badge that he's got is fantastic, and it's a great thing to have, and huge respect for all of his achievements. But I think it also exerts a lot more pressure than it will on a Ricciardo or a Sainz.
Yeah, and I think in particular for Seb as well, coming off a dreadful year last season, a whole year of not only bad performances, but knowing a team that didn't want him there, it's going to be a very different bounce back to Danny Rick, who's moving to a team to try and get back to winning ways, to Carlos Sainz, who's thinking in his head he's moving to Ferrari. Of course, he's going to move there and progress his career. So Seb's obviously at a very different stage of his career, and there will be question marks on whether he maybe should have retired, maybe moved to a different project. And so all that's going to be playing in his head. And look at Checo Perez today. Look at all the struggles he had. And certainly Seb's first race of the season wasn't great, but improvement is going to be the aim of the game for all of these drivers at the moment. And I think a lot of people will compare Seb to Lance Stroll and see where Perez was compared to Stroll. But Perez had been there for 7 or 8 seasons at that team. So I think, again, Seb will be fine. He might be behind Lance at the end of the year. He might be behind Lance next year. Lance isn't a bad driver. I know he's probably one of the most underrated, overrated drivers you'll ever see from most Formula One fans because he's so hard to place where he is in the pecking order. But he is more consistent this year. He does seem to be more complete. And I think for Seb, it's going to be more about settling in at the moment rather than scoring loads and loads of points and flashy performances.
We'll just fly through chat and take a couple of your questions just in case we've missed anything before we end the stream. 1,500 watching. Please do drop a like. We're nearly at 500. So a few more likes, always appreciated. Don't forget to subscribe as well and all that other YouTube nonsense that we keep coming out with. Any word on Kimi penalty? Says Cassetti55. Nothing yet that I've seen. I'll have another check in just a moment. But yeah, nothing at the moment. Just Stroll with a penalty and no further action on Bottas and Russell. Ferrari are going to own in 2022, says Darth. Perez will be okay, says Corolla. I would say Corolla rather than, I've probably destroyed that anyway, or Carola. I apologise. I am so sorry. I was saying I'm British as well, so we're ignorant with our pronunciations, and I do apologise. Is there anything wrong with a little bit of luck? Says Da Big Steel. No, every driver gets lucky and every driver gets unlucky. I don't think there's anything wrong with luck at all. I can't. You'll not be able to go through. Somebody will have me on this one because they always do when I come out with these statements on stream without checking. But I think you'll struggle to find many world champions in Formula One who haven't had a little bit of luck somewhere. So yeah, it's not been a disappointing start. New driver Aston, he's improving in a completely new car, new engine, new people, says Raul. I think I take the point, and I completely agree that we've got to give him time and he's got to get used to the new car. But I just think from what I thought he would be up a bit closer to Lance than he has been. I think he's had a disappointing start in the sense that he had the crash with Ocon in Bahrain, and then today he had the penalty and some other stuff. It's just disappointing in that regard, not necessarily with him as a person or a driver. I just think I expected a little bit more. Can you please cover the start again so people can get it out of their system? Says Joshua. Cover the start. Start the race. Come on, Sean. That was such an easy question. I'm so sorry, Joshua. Good Lord. Yeah, the start. I mean, Verstappen, second gear, off the line. Quite why nobody else did that, I'm not sure. Maybe he was just more confident doing that. Fantastic start from second. I mean, he was almost on the grass, wasn't he, on the run to that first chicane? I did flinch a little bit, and Lewis Hamilton's got a Red Bull almost one side and then one definitely on the other side, and then into turn one. It's not turn one, it's turn two, but I'm calling it turn one because it's the first braking point. You know what I mean? Into the Tamburello chicane. For me, that's a racing incident. I think the first lap racing incident, I don't think there's anything in that at all. I think Hamilton, on reflective, I've not seen any interviews of his, but if he were to watch that back, he'll probably say exactly the same. Verstappen's got that corner. He's on the inside. Hamilton tries to keep it out around the outside. Wasn't going to happen. And I know Hamilton complained on the radio, but we said at the start, didn't we, Dan? I don't think there's anything in that. We've seen Hamilton run people out wide on the first lap of races. We've seen Vettel do it over times. We've seen probably most drivers on the grid do it at some point. It's just one of those first corner incidents. I don't think there's anything in that. But a little bit of damage on the front wing. I thought it looked like quite a hefty chunk of debris come off initially, but it was just sort of just off the front wing end fence. I thought that was really going to affect Lewis Hamilton. So again, credit to him, to be fair, for taking what was, even with minor damage, still a damaged car to get back to second place. So yeah, I think there's not much to say. We didn't see the Stroll-Norris one, which I'm really intrigued to find, Dan. You've flagged that one to me now. You got me intrigued.
Well, it's just Lando keeps mentioning it. And I keep thinking, well, it can't have been that big because obviously Lando, if you don't know, ended up on the podium and Lance scored points even with his penalties. Yeah. So it can't have been that extreme, but it's just one of those things this weekend. Broadcasting, I wish, just would have shown a little bit more sometimes.
Yeah, we got the replays at the start, didn't we? But I'm just trying to think if there's much really that really went on in there at the start. It's kind of, we had a lot. The problem was with this race in particular was that because they're all hurtling down to turn one, I couldn't see a lot behind because of all the spray that was being kicked up by those at the front. So there was so much spray that it was difficult to see what was going on behind. I've not really seen. We didn't get as many replays at the start as it's been actually, it's been really poor this weekend. The broadcasting has. I know they had their issues on Friday, but it was better in FP2, but we didn't get all the information we usually would. We got the stupid AWS graphics, but we didn't get many onboard shots. We haven't got an onboard of Bottas with Russell from the T-Cam, which is really bizarre to me, given they're all fitted and they're not dummy cameras at this stage of the weekend. And I think there was a lot of disappointment in the broadcast this weekend for me. So I can't, aside from the Verstappen Hamilton incident, if you want to call it that, into the first chicane, I don't want to go and say too much in case I get something completely wrong, which I know I will have done anyway in this stream, but I don't want to start going, that move from Raikkonen to pass 8 cars into turn 1 was incredible when it turns out he didn't pass anyone. But yeah, I think Verstappen off the line was a big surprise. Somebody did also say, by the way, apparently I sound like I've got a mask on. I've just noticed on my audio interface thing, I didn't put my filter on, so I probably sound a bit more bassy and yeah. Sorry, that's really annoying me now. But yeah, anything you could think of from the start, Dan, that we missed, mate, apart from that one? Like I said, the spray was making it difficult.
Yeah, not really. I can't remember if Carlos Sainz went off on the opening lap. The big one was Latifi, wasn't it, eventually, when we got round the end there. He was actually really lucky to get going again after spinning and ended up in the gravel. But opportunistic from Max, certainly pushing the boundaries. Hamilton lucky, like you mentioned, to get away with that little bit of contact. And there was a stage where I thought, oh my goodness, are we going to see a puncher for Max? Are we going to see Hamilton's front wing just suddenly drop? It didn't, and actually it set up a really good opening phase of the race. But I thought there would be more chaos, to be honest with you, especially with the visibility as it was. But most of them keeping it clean, including most of the rookies as well, which was impressive considering it was only their second start in F1. But just a whole race from start to finish, just carnage everywhere, chaos everywhere, and has just set us up for a great season.
Apparently Hamilton was okay with it all on Dutch TV, so that's cleared up. And Josh just wanted to know about that incident, so thank you very much, Josh, for your question. I'll take two more super quickly. We'll do them quick fire as well because we've nearly at 2 hours. I know the first 5 minutes of the stream was a bit ummy and ahry whilst we were sorting out technical issues, so I don't mind overrunning a little bit. But let's just let's have a look. Talk about the UEFA Super League. No. Let's avoid that one. I'll wait till I've got all the information before I pass comment. I don't think it's a UEFA thing, is it? I think it's a big club. No, let's not get it's an F1 word. I'll make a football channel and we'll talk about it. We will not. Hamilton looking not to ruin a car on the sausages. Good point, definitely. I did see another question there. R32 guesses, what are your thoughts on how Mick is settling into F1 super quickly, Dan? Are you happy with him so far or still a bit early to tell? As I probably answered the question for you there, so why bother?
Okay. I wasn't super impressed with him in F2, and I thought he might struggle a little bit more than he has, but he's definitely got the measure of his teammate, and I didn't think that'd be the case. I did think it would be really, really close, but he's, even in his interviews, very mature, got a cool head on him, and actually is straight away jumped into that car and become the team leader, which I didn't expect. So from that point of view, I think he's actually had a really good start to his career in F1.
April feels like race coverage has been subpar since ESPN took over a couple of years ago. It was much better on NBC Sports. Dan the Indoor Man says, tell you what, I'll give up asking for a spanner if you stream marbles every race weekend. Is everyone cool with that if I head on over to Twitch on a race weekend and I stream marbles and don't bother with any previews or anything? We'll just stream marbles all weekend. No. I'll do marbles at some point, I will. And what do you think Perez and Bottas needs to do to be in contention this year? Says DRD Nobody. Bottas we said earlier, Bottas has got to turn up to Portimao and he's got to nail the weekend. He doesn't need to win, but he needs to be much better because he's 16 points on the ball, so 44 for Hamilton. He's a long way off the top already, and I know 21 race season, potentially 26 points if you can get the win in the fastest lap, so it's not a huge margin, but given that the chances of Verstappen and Hamilton retiring or failing to score at many races, there won't be many, will there, Dan, in theory, unless they come together. We're not going to see huge mistakes from either driver, so it's a massive ask for Bottas to turn that around, even though it is still early days. But I think he just needs a clean weekend, does Bottas. Again, he doesn't need to win in Portimao. A quick, clean weekend, good in practice, good in quality, doesn't even need pole. Hook it all, kind of bounce back, I suppose, is the phrase I'm going to use for Bottas. But if I'm being honest, and absolutely, and if this does come back to bite me at the end of the year, I'll be thrilled. I will, because I'd love to see him do it in so many ways. But I don't think Bottas is in the title hunt anyway. Even with everything at zero, I didn't think he was. So, especially with Red Bull being on the pace this year right from the off. But Perez, what do you reckon, Dan, for him to get himself in the mix or in contention for this year's title?
Ooh. A little bit like what you said with Bottas, I kind of feel it's starting to slip away already. I think if Checo was going to be in that fight, he would have, scored points today, but at least picked up his first podium by now. But I don't think that's, of course, Checo would love to be in the fight, but I don't think that's his target for this year. I think for Red Bull, they need to just get a driver in there that can be consistent. They know Checo can be consistent. So I'm very much thinking Checo's aiming for a couple of wins, a few podiums, and helping Red Bull secure the constructors. I think that's the aim. I think drivers is a step too far in his first season, and you picked up on it earlier. I think very, very early on, we're already seeing a Hamilton versus Max. Red Bull, historically, this has been the case, and I think it will happen again this year. I think we'll very, very quickly swap to a number one, number two structure, unless something can change next time out in Portimao. Mercedes, it might take a little bit longer, but we've said for so long, Valtteri needs to find that consistency. And after today, he's going to have to find that pretty quickly if he wants to fight for the title.
Great point from Commando46 answering that question. They have to drive better. It's kind of that was the easy way around for me, wasn't it? After all that waffle, that's kind of it as well. And I did see somebody ask if we thought Bottas might win a race this year. I'd be surprised if he didn't. Josh Mason. I'd be very, very surprised if he didn't. And breaking news: Charles Leclerc did not have radio in the entire second half of the race. He did not know whether it would be a standing start, restart, or not. Utter bad luck, says 242 Turbo. Thank you very much for that one. And just super quickly before we wrap up, Dan, I'll just have a double check and see if they're going to do anything with Kimi Räikkönen. Nothing that I can see. No, I can't see anything on Kimi just yet, so it doesn't look like it. And just a comment from Lewis Hamilton, actually. Today was incredibly tough. I refuse to believe it was over, and somehow we found a way out of the gravel. Glad that both George and Valtteri were able to walk away. Huge congrats to Max. He did an awesome job. And to Lando, great to see you and the team on the podium. And just looking to see if any of the drivers have said anything. I'm not even having press releases yet, Dan. They're usually in midway through the stream. We usually have something by now, so quite a surprise if not that. So maybe drivers and that busy watching football or something and watching the race back, because it was one of them. I'd imagine they're pretty swift to watch that one back. But yeah, we'll leave it at that one. Looks like Channel 4 having trouble as well. But we'll wrap it up, Dan. We have overrun a little bit, but we had those issues at the start, so we'll let it slide today. We'll let it slide today. Thank you for coming along, mate. Great start to the season. Bahrain and Imola. First of all, two great tracks anyway. But what a great couple of races to kick off the season. And Portimao, just 2 weeks away.
Yeah, I hope for a good season, but never in my wildest dreams did I think we'd start with two absolute bangers and two very different races as well. Circuit like Imola, we thought it wouldn't be overtaken, but everywhere you look today, there seemed to be carnage. So thank you very much for having me, mate. And hopefully we can look forward to another cracking race in Portimao.
Yeah, fingers crossed, mate. But it's been a pleasure, and I'm sure I'll talk to you again soon.
Awesome. Thanks, dude. See you later.
Cheers. Thank you to Dan, and thank you as well to you guys for popping along for this one. It's been, like I said, great start to the season. Two really good races, two very different races at two very different racetracks as well. So, and Portimao, the cars looked great around there last year, didn't they? So hopefully it'll be another cracker in Portugal as well. We'll see. Usual YouTuber stuff, once again. Please do drop a like before you disappear. Always massively appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe as well. Lots of content coming up over the next few days, weeks, months, and hopefully years. If a few of you stick around, then I'll keep doing it. But hopefully years, yeah. And I will be back later in the week with some more content, and hopefully some news as well. But we'll crack on with that. Never mind. So I thought I started a news thing on Raikkonen. No, I didn't. So I'm going to start looking at Twitter. Let's round this one off. It's been a pleasure to chat to you all. Back next week with more content. And then, of course, we are going to be building up to the Portuguese Grand Prix weekend. Same content as usual, really. The preview, the news on a Saturday morning first thing, and then the stream as well. Don't forget you can follow me on social media. All of the links you need for that are in the description down below. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel as well. And I'm going to wrap it up. I'm just going to go. One day I'm just going to say bye and end the stream, because I'm terrible at signing off on live streams. Fine in videos, terrible on live streams. But as ever, thank you for watching. I've been sure this has been the F1 Word, and until next time, goodbye.